Hello, and welcome to Things We Said Today, our bi-weekly podcast about anything and everything to do with the Beatles, past, present, sometimes things to come, and anything we want to talk about having to do with the Beatles. I'm Allan, the author of The Beatles from the Cavern to the Rooftop, and Got That Something, How the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand Changed Everything, and co-author with Adrian Sinclair of The McCartney Legacy, Volume 1, 1969 to 1973. See it back here on the music stand. And I'm joined by my two regular co-hosts, Ken Michaels, who you know is the host of the syndicated Beatles radio show Every Little Thing, and co-host of the solo Beatles podcast Talk More Talk. He also has his own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, which is packed with Beatles-related interviews and other stuff. And hello, Ken.
Hello, Allan. I'm super excited about our show this time. I usually am, but I'm even more excited this time. Hi, Darren.
You can figure out why.
Because I'm here.
That's true.
Darren Devivo, my other co-host, who's been a DJ at WFUV FM 90.7 in the New York area since February 1984. If you're not in the New York vicinity, you can hear him and everything else at WFUV at WFUV.org. Hello, Darren.
Hello, Allan. Hi, Ken. And hi, Peter.
Yeah, so we have
Hi, everybody.
Pretty special show. We've got this guy down here. You might recognize, he's been on our show before. And
well, I'm here because I was listening to your 400th episode the other night, and I think it was Darren said, we were talking about the other interview we did, and then Darren said, Peter, if you're listening, and you want to come back on the show, just get in touch, please. So I was ordered to get in touch, so here I am.
Okay, and if anybody who's been living under a rock and doesn't recognize him, this of course is Peter Jackson, who basically anyone listening to this show has a lot to be grateful for. Get Back, lots and lots of hours of the Get Back sessions. And now the Now and Then video, but also in between, as a sort of byproduct of the Get Back project, there's the MAL system, which is a machine learning system, which has made, it made some of the remixes on the Revolver set possible. We've already had that. And now all the new remixes on the Red album, 1962 to 70, that those things were sort of taken apart by the MAL system so they could be put back together again in a listenable stereo mix. And so, Peter, great to have you here.
Thank you. That'd be fun. That's good. Yeah, there's certainly a bit to talk about, I guess, in this world since we spoke last. So
that's right. So let's talk about, I guess we'll start with the Now and Then video. Since this is your very first music video, as you've pointed out, and you said that you gave the impression that you were kind of terrified facing the prospect of having to make a music video, not to mention it being the Beatles. So when you were staring at the blank page or blank screen or whatever you work out your ideas on, how did you begin to come up with the ideas that became this video?
Well, I mean, that's the essence of the problem that I had, and that's the essence of why I was so nervous, really, to some degree. But because it's not a question. I mean, normally when you make a movie of some description, you are staring at a blank page, and then you start to come up with ideas. You put them on the blank page, and then the job becomes how once you're happy with what's on the page, once you've sort of got whether it's an outline or a script or whatever it is, once you've done that, you then the process is about setting about how do I film that, or how do I get those ideas onto the screen. But I was just aware that with the in this particular situation with the Beatles, you've got no chance of doing that. It's not a question of the blank page. The blank page is a luxury that doesn't exist, and you've got to see what is available to you and retro engineer something. And so that that made me really nervous because I'd never done that before, and the whole idea of a music video, because I'm not a music guy. I mean, I don't have collections of CDs. I don't listen to music. I only really listen to one band, and have done for 40 years. I'm a pathetic person in the sense of the range of my musical taste. It's got them very, very narrow. So I just don't, And over the years, different bands I mean, no one hugely famous, but odd, bands here and there have asked me to do a music video for them, every now and again, and I've always just found an excuse to say no. And then when Apple asked me to do this, I think that was asked about a year ago, last October. I said no. I mean, it's exactly what I said. I actually turned them down. I said, look, I think my exact words were, I've never done a music video before, and there's other people in the world that can make them far, far, far better than me. So you should go to them, and I look forward to seeing it, sort of thing. Yeah. And at that time when they asked me, I think they wanted it by March or something, March this year. I mean, part of the whole thing with Now and Then is the release kept sliding back all the way through the year. So, but back a year ago, it was good where they were thinking about March, April this year. So, and that felt, with Christmas coming up and having a break over Christmas, it all felt like it was rushed. And so anyway, I said no. And they I think they went off and did sort of try to find some other filmmakers. But anyway, I got another call in January or something from Jeff Jones. I think the first one was Jonathan. The second one was Jeff Jones saying, "Oh, Peter, we've this is like Get Back all over again," which is sort of how Get Back started. We've been trying to find someone to make it, and we can't. And ideas that people have given us, we're not happy with, and the boys, so the boys just really want you to do it. Would you reconsider? And I said, well, what's the deadline now? It can't be April. It can't be no. And then they said, oh no, it's pushed back to, I forget what it was, pushed back to June or July or August or something at that point. And so there was time, and I was equally scared. I was no less scared. I was equally reluctant, but I just felt like I didn't want to let them down, and I didn't, So anyway, I said, okay, and I said, well, let me look at everything and give me a chance to get my head around it. And that was really a process that began. And I never said yes. I mean, I still to this day haven't said yes to them doing it. I haven't agreed to do it even yet. So it's a bit late now, I guess, for that conversation. But I just wanted, because to me it was that the scariness of not having that blank page. I didn't have a blank page. I was going to be constrained by what there was available. So it was critical for me to even begin to think about it. I mean, you can't even think about it until you know what's available to you, what material there is. Otherwise, I mean, what is there to think about if you don't actually know, the ingredients that you've got? You can't make a cake without knowing what the ingredients are on the bench, to make it from. And so I sort of said, well, let's just send it. Let's just let me see stuff you've got, and what is there? Because one thing I've always had in my mind is that it should be a live action. It should be a live action sort of film. I mean, I'm going to call it a film, a live action film with the Beatles in it. Because obviously they've done in the past, in sort of recent past, they've done sort of very interesting animation. I'm Only Sleeping came out, which was animated, and it was that really good the Glass Onion music video that came out a few years ago. I thought was a really, really clever, where the White Album poster was sort of brought to life and in sort of an animated way, and those are really, really clever, those things. But I did feel that for their last one, that they shouldn't need to resort. They should be the Beatles on screen, if at all possible. And so anyway, that just started a process, and it was an interesting little journey to see, just to put in footage. It was like we were constantly dragging stuff in, and it wasn't until we had bits and pieces coming in. It wasn't until we actually started to really get a kind of a collection of it that I could even start to begin to think of, well, okay, this is what I've got. What do I do with it? That which was the next question. But so it was just finding out what I had was the process, which wasn't that straightforward, really.
Did you go to London to look at what they had, or
no? They sent us. They're able to sort of send stuff to me over over the internet or some sort of secure connection. But you know, there was interesting things. I mean, talking about the 1995 footage for a second was interesting because they sent me, you know, I said, well, okay, well, let's start by sending me the 1995, footage, all the rushes that you've got, because obviously I've seen it, we've seen it used in various ways, and they've used it sort of here and there all over the place, so sort of familiar with what some of it looks like, and some of it's online, obviously, and so but I said, just send me what you've got, and they said, well, we and of course, the people I'm talking to at Apple weren't actually there in 1995, which is sort of which is the part of the issue with this, is that you don't have people there who were there at the time, so there's sort of the first-hand knowledge isn't quite there. So so they said, well, we've got an hour of footage which was filmed in Paul's studio, and I said, is there anything on that footage where they're working on now and then? Because I obviously knew the same as what we've all heard, that they spent some time on now and then. And they said, no, it's all real love, because I think Free as a Bird had been done a year before. I think Free as a Bird was already finished. I mean, that had been recorded and the year before. So that session that they did, and I think it was February 1995. In Paul studio was strictly just for Now and Then and Real Love, but they said everything we've got, all the footage we got is just some Real Love. So I said, okay, and then I didn't really want to have to cheat it. I mean, other videos have done this, but I didn't want to have to cheat them playing Real Love and try to sync their hands up with the chords of Now and Then, or try. I mean, it's obviously when you can't do anything else, you're sort of forced to do that, but I thought it's a shame to do that, And anyway, so I got the hour of footage, and I looked at it, and I got back to them, and I said, so you say that this is just this is the only hour that was shot? Yep. It is, and so you're saying that a film crew went in, these three guys were reforming to do these songs. A film crew was sent in to shoot this sort of EPK material, and they only shot an hour, and they said they went on one day and shot an hour, and we're going to realize, And then I said, well, why is George Harrison wearing four different shirts? If they went on, because it's not one day, it's clearly 4 days. You look at his shirt, look at his clothes, they're changing all the time. And I said, I bet they didn't go in and shoot 10 or 15 minutes a day for 4 days. I mean, you're there, you're going to be filming it. And so I said, are you sure this is? And so they said, oh, hang on, it's a good point. We're going to check and see it back. And then they dug deeper and deeper into the vaults, and they came back again. I mean, it's not a criticism of Apple or anything else, but it's just the fact you are dealing with people that weren't there then. So they are sort of as much as as anybody trying to figure out what they've got. Whereas, so they dug deeper, and they always, to their credit, every time I push them, they do go in and make a real effort. And they came back and they said, oh, the good news is we found more footage from February 95, and it's about 14 hours long. It's about 14 hours worth. I thought, okay, well, good, this is better. And I said, because they'd watched some of it, and I said, and is there any of that footage where they're doing Now and Then? And they said, yeah, we looked at some of it, and they're definitely doing Now and Then. So we got all that sent to New Zealand, the 14 hours, and as it turns out, there's I think, I mean, I'm not being precise, but I think there's about 2.5 or 3 hours of the footage is now, and I was working on Now and Then, and the rest of it is Real Love. Mm-hmm. Plus there's in between bits where they're sitting around drinking tea and reading papers and all that sort of thing. So anyway, suddenly now, so that at that point, the music video became sort of a thing, because we actually had we had a lot of footage, 3 hours, whatever it was, a lot of footage of them working on Now and Then, and some of it they're actually recording the tracks, like George Harrison's guitar tracks that are in the finished song. You do see them being recorded because he and Paul are wearing cans, and so they're hearing John and George is playing. So it's not just a rehearsal. I mean, some of it is rehearsing, but there is a significant section of it which is recording as well. So you're actually getting the exact point. That those that the guitars being being filmed. So that was helpful. That was incredibly helpful, and it was the key to really, and it wasn't obviously that the videos made up a lot more stuff, but that was the key to it. And then they, as they said, now we've got we did a string session in Los Angeles, with Giles and Paul, a string session, and we filmed that. We had a crew in there, so I said, "Oh, please send me that footage," and they did. And then Ringo and Paul shot stuff, and I was hoping to get in front of the Ringo and Paul thing and talk to them and try and plan what they should film, and try to get them in the same room together. But they filmed their stuff so fast, so quick. I mean, the incredible thing with people like Paul and Ringo, unlike a lot of other people that you work with that say, you ask them to do something and they say, yeah, and 2 weeks go by and they have to have a reminder, and then, and then eventually it happens. You think you've got time, but with these guys, I mean, God, they're old school. You ask them to do something and the next day, boom, it's done. They are super quick and super efficient. So they sort of, unfortunately, that all, I was just trying to think about now, how would we film them? What would we do? And then they film themselves. They film themselves and just sent it to me. So I thought, okay, well, all right, that's okay. But then, we had to. So we had that. So therefore, we've got we got a lot of the elements now. And then and then it was a question of coming up with ideas. And I was aware, because of work we'd done. I mean, I looked at, we had the outtakes from Hello Goodbye back when we were doing Get Back. I think we were looking at them in case we wanted to use stuff in the prologue or something. I don't know. We got a lot. We looked at a lot of material in the Get Back early days of Get Back before we really knew what we would and wouldn't use. And so I had seen all the Hello Goodbye outtakes, and so I was sort of aware of vaguely what was going on in them, and so I sort of just, so I looked at those again. I already had those from Get Back on my iPad. They didn't need to send those, so I looked at those and looked at the orchestral footage, looked at the stuff in the orchestra, and just suddenly that idea popped into my mind of having putting John on the podium, and it was just like it just sort of pieced itself together bit by bit. It was never a grand vision for it, because I didn't know. I didn't know. It was like you're literally piecing it together one idea at a time. An idea, you get to have an idea of doing this, so you do it, and then you think, okay, well, there's a hole here, and we left gaps too, because we were having to land on the music. So the orchestral stuff, we wanted to sync it up with the strings, so we started to work on that, and we had we sort of did a little bit at the beginning, and then we had big holes where we had a big gap that we had to fill in that we didn't. Okay, well, we could get a bit of Paul and Ringo singing, singing the chorus. Well, it would be like, well, wouldn't it be great if we actually put them together as if they're in the same room, which would have been ideal. So then we cut Ringo out and of his studio and put him into Paul's studio. So that filled in. So you're just filling in these holes. It was the process that I mean, having never done it before, that was how I went through it, how I discovered it. You sort of get ideas, and usually they're tied to a little bit of the song, a particular bit of the song. So you put that in there, and then the hole, and then you put something else in there, and the hole gets smaller and smaller, and you just filling in all these black holes in the thing until there aren't any more holes left.
It's kind of funny that I guess because Hello Goodbye has those viola parts, that they were doing this, that you could put that with the
I know it was absolutely perfect. And it was when I was thinking about funny casual Beatles stuff, because I also I didn't really want stuff where John and George looked like they were playing something, because again, I didn't want to have to cheat. I didn't want to make it look like in 1967 or in the 60s, any Beatles footage, that they were playing that now and then. I just didn't really want to try to. I wasn't really interested in being dishonest quite in that way. It was like now and then we don't have anything, obviously, any footage of John doing his bit, but there's footage of George doing his guitar, and there's footage of Ringo and Paul doing theirs, but and John is just the needle. He that was an early idea I had when John started to sing. It was just to have him be all that he is now as a voice, and then it's a needle on the meter. Just that's what John is at that point. So I had that idea early on, but of course you can't have that all the way through the song is at the very beginning. So but then I didn't want to cheat anything from the 60s to make it look like they're doing now and then, because I think that's not right. And so it was a question of, well, what 60s footage is there of the Beatles where they're not really, they're sort of not actually particularly playing. And I remembered all those outtakes from Hello Goodbye, and I look back at those. Yeah, and I was amazed because I'd been thinking about the idea. We had the string section footage from LA, and then I looked at the outtakes again afresh, and I was amazed because you've got them doing the miming of strings, and I thought, God, this is absolutely perfect. So they just happened to fit together. It was no genius thing. It was just like, well, they just those two bits of film found themselves. They sort of found each other, as it were. Yeah.
Okay. I should probably pass you to one of my colleagues, Ken.
Okay, Peter, an absolutely brilliant video. Was it also a bit of a challenge for you with all the ideas that you were accumulating here to narrow everything down to a 4-minute video? You probably had a lot there to work with.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have a reputation for having trouble narrowing things down to 4 hours. But in this case, it was the other way around. As I say, it's like it was literally, you have on the Avid, which is the editing machine we use. You have the song playing. We had the soundtrack of the song, and on day one you have the song and the picture is black. It's just black. You can in theory you're looking at the video, but there isn't any video there because it's just black. So it's a process of just then taking what the footage you have and think of ideas for certain bits, and you put these bits in where they fit, and so it was actually the opposite. It was where it was a question of building it up from the bottom and just filling in the holes. And so when that last hole was filled, it was done. It was never a reductive process. It was never like there's way too many ideas that we can possibly fit in here. It was actually the opposite. It was like how can we fill this hole? How can we fill that hole? That was that was so it was a very, very different experience to anything I've done before, which was actually fun. And I look at the end of the day, I all the stuff about me being nervous and not wanting to do it is true, but it did make me realize at the end of it, because I could have ended up enjoying it and having fun with it at the end. And I thought, well, this is what they mean by when you go out of your comfort zone, when you've actually in this case, I was felt pressured to. I didn't want to go out of my comfort zone. I wanted to stay doing what I always do, but they, Apple and stuff sort of gave me a shove and pushed me out of my comfort zone, and you just realize at times that that's actually a good thing. Having to do something that's not not your usual thing. You're not feeling safe, you're not feeling secure, you're feeling nervous and scared. That's actually quite a good, from a creative point of view. That is quite a healthy thing.
Yeah. One of the things that I appreciate about the video, I mean, it's being billed as the last Beatles song. You could have turned this into a completely depressing video if you wanted to, but you used Hello Goodbye to its advantage because the Beatles are moving around so much and clowning around, and John is dancing, and George is unbuttoning his vest and doing stuff like that. So you showed the Beatles' sense of humor.
Oh, sure, yeah, but I mean, the only real conversation I had with Apple about any of what they want, because when I sort of agreed to do it, and when that second phone call happened from Jeff, and I said, okay, well, all right, well, I'll let me look at it and think, and I said, well, what are you imagining? Because I just said, what is it that you kind of want? And they said, well, we want it, whatever you want. I mean, it's what the sort of thing they say, anything you want. I'm thinking, I don't know what I want. But the only thing that Jeff said to me is, he said, we just want it to be emotional. We just want it to be emotional. Okay, well, yeah. It's actually in a weird way. I mean, it's not hard to use stock footage, to use existing footage, and and create emotion. Emotion is sort of meanings, I guess, sort of pathos or sadness or some description. I guess what emotion means. I mean, that's actually not that difficult to tell you the truth. If you've got the right footage, it's not that hard. And I thought, okay, well, I can do that. And the song certainly, is certainly lends itself to that film too. And then we did it. We did some work on the beginning. We did a bit, and I just thought, and I just suddenly had this sort of feeling of thinking, God, this could be such a depressing. This could be so depressing. This video, because it was so I did in the first few days of working on the cutting room and thinking about it, looking at footage, I was thinking, making it emotional all the way through. That was what how do we tug the heartstrings and all that sort of thing. For obvious reasons, it's different. There's lots of reasons why the heartstrings should be tugged, and I just, I was thinking of ideas, and some of them I thought were, were good ideas, were going to work. I was, and then I just suddenly said, well, hang on, this is not the Beatles. The Beatles actually were not. The one thing that the Beatles weren't is sort of, they weren't sentimental or self-indulgent in this way. They weren't the Beatles were never about feel sorry for us. We want you to feel sorry for us, and that's just not the Beatles. It's not the spirit of the Beatles. Now, obviously, it has to be a bit of that in it because of the circumstances of the song. There has to be, you can't not have it. But I just thought this is wrong. So at that point, that's when the sort of the orchestra and the outtakes of those ideas were starting to come to mind. And really, I gravitated towards the Hello Goodbye outtakes. Having sort of seen them earlier, forget back, as I say. I've seen a lot of the outtakes and all that stuff. So I'm sort of aware of what's available. I mean, I remember them being the funniest. The outtakes for Penny Lane. That I've got the outtakes for the Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really funny in those. I mean, those that's not. I mean, they're interesting, but they're not particularly funny. They're interesting in Penny Lane when the horse bolts and I think John clings on and the horse gallops away he's trying to stay on the horse. There are some I mean, there are some outtakes that are quite humorous in that way, but it's not. But they're not particularly funny, but I remember the Hello Goodbye ones as being funny, as they make you smile when you see them, they make you laugh. So I sort of went straight to those from memory of what they were, and then I looked at them afresh, and then I'd seen the orchestra, so I was starting to look at them with the orchestra and stuff in mind, and so sort of see what we could do.
Yeah. Well, just since you mentioned the orchestra part of the video, I got to tell you, my favorite moment, well, one of them, because there's so many of them, is when John is lifting up his hands like this, as if to say, make it louder. It just seems so natural. It's, inserted.
Yeah. Well, that was what that's like the whole that whole Hello Goodbye stuff offered up. I mean, it was John. What John was doing with his hands, it just reminded me of a conductor. When you see him and on Hello Goodbye and that outtakes, there he just I just felt well that's sort of a conductor, but in a crazy, insane way, So it became an obvious thing to do that then.
Yeah.
And then it's again you're retrofitting everything. So then we're looking at all this orchestra footage, which they've got about an hour and a half. And we're looking at close-ups. They've got close-ups of the players, and so we're looking for any close-ups where the players are looking up and they could be reacting to John, because obviously they weren't reacting to John. They didn't have a clue. But you're looking for anything that you can get from them, and there was only the two that are in there were the only two we could really find. There's a guy she looks up and there's a woman playing. Those two that sort of seem to react to John are out of all the footage, it was the only two where any of the players do anything that would remotely resemble them seeing John. But two's fine, and it worked well. It's good.
Yeah, well, since you're talking about reactions to things, a great moment is when you've got John and George from the Hello Goodbye looking back at Ringo playing.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't too hard, because that on the Hello Goodbye stuff, that's exactly what they're doing. You've got George, you've got John, and you've got Ringo in 1967. There. So they are looking back at him in the footage. So that was a question of then just replacing the younger Ringo with the new Ringo with the old, and then you see what the difficulty was then is that Ringo had filmed all his stuff himself. I think he got some mate of his to do it. I mean, these are not professional film crews coming in, with lights and everything. This is just a friend of his. And so we were looking through the Ringo, and some of it's handheld and was moved because you have to have it nice stable. So we had to sort of find a bit of Ringo playing that could actually fit there, because if it's too, it has to be the right sort of lens and the right sort of feel. And so it was we were always having to retrofit stuff in, and but we did. I mean, we got lucky. We found the angles of Ringo that we were looking for were there. They just were there. I mean, I think sometimes it was handheld and we had to stabilize it to lock it down, so that, because obviously you don't want the Ringo in the background to be moving around while the guys in the foreground are standing still. But just talking about the orchestra for a second, what I remember, there's been some mention online recently of the that the orchestra didn't know what they were playing, that they they weren't told that it was a Beatles track that that they were doing strings to. But anyway, so when just going back to when Jabez, who edited this with me, who was great, by the way, because Jabez has cut videos before for songs. I mean, he knew what he was doing, so I was always relying on him to help. What do I do here? What do I do here? And he was able to, he's done all that of cutting things to the beat of them. I mean, which I have no clue about. So Jabez was great doing all that. But anyway, Jabez and I looked through the orchestra stuff, and we were just talking about that same thing. We said, well, what did they tell these people? Do these people know that they're recording for a Beatles track? I mean, because they hadn't. I mean, Apple hadn't told us any of that sort of stuff. They just, and then we looked at. So there was a shot where the camera was sort of over the shoulder of one of the players, and you could see their music sheet. Wasn't that clear? So we froze it and we zoomed it up. And the title on their sheets, on the music sheets, was a give and take. It was, they were playing a piece called Give and Take. They weren't playing Now and Then. I guess they didn't, just in case some of them were fans and they would recognize that name. But they were playing something called Give and Take, which is actually, I understand that they'd been told was a McCartney kind of a thing for Paul. So they thought they were doing some McCartney thing called Give and Take. Yeah. Interesting. But I guess, and I was thinking, when are they going to find out? I mean, did they know until when the video came out, or are they going to see the video for the first time and find out? I wonder if anyone had actually told them beforehand or not, or they just saw it online. I don't know.
There's an article in Rolling Stone yesterday about one of the violists who died of breast cancer in between the session and now, so she never found out.
Never knew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, because the article also showed that I guess Paul signed all the sheet music with that Give and Take, and but this one musician who was a huge Beatles fan and played that session ultimately didn't know that she was on the last Beatles song because she passed away.
That's really sad. That's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad. Yeah.
I think yesterday, Alan, you said yesterday the story was released, and I think it sounded like the musicians saw the video when we saw the video, and that's when it all kind of came together for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because I don't think that Apple, with the best intention of the world, I don't think Apple were going to sit down and make like there was about 30 players and make 30 phone calls sort of the night before. I don't think. I mean, I've done it, but so I guess they, I mean, they and so that was a retro, like the players looking up and reacting to John, where we had Paul in the control room sitting. I mean, sometimes he was out in the studio in the footage, and sometimes he was just sitting in the control room with Giles beside him, and so we were having to retrofit all of Paul's reactions to because they were filming. He was filming that. He had no idea about the video and what we were going to do, and nor did we when that was being filmed anyway. But and so like there's that shot where George and Paul are sort of doing a striptease thing from the old footage. And you get this sort of you think that Paul's performing really well. He's glancing at George, and he glances at the thing. I mean, that was just a random. He was looking at Giles for something, and some other bloke was there, and he was glancing at him. I mean, he was just reacting to the room, to people in the room who were talking to him, and we just those little looks we saw those and thought, okay, well we're trying to find a good spot for the to put the 67 Beatles, and we just saw that reaction. Okay, well, it'll fit. So it was all a question of it was retrofitting the stuff, which was quite time consuming, but enjoyable actually. It's quite when you get a victory, when you get something that fits together, even though it might only be 2.5 seconds long or 3 seconds, it's great. You just think, okay, great, that's three seconds done. That's good.
It just seemed to fit the whole theme with Now and Then to mix
exactly.
New footage with old footage. And my favorite moments are, you've got Ringo from Hello Goodbye on drums next to Ringo Today on drums. You've got George from 95 in the studio next to George Hello Goodbye in the studio. And it's magnificent.
The thing with Ringo drumming with Ringo seemed to me to be, as someone who's seen him a lot over the years. I mean, Ringo, since the Beatles, has always preferred a double drum setup. And in this case, he was both drummers. And that struck me as like one of a number of things in the video that seemed really for Beatle obsessives. And another one was actually not just in this video, but in the video and the documentary. In the documentary, you have the drum head, and it's a Susie and the Red Stripes drum head. Yeah. And in the video, it's the one they were using when they did Magical Mystery Tour. Are there a number of other things like that you can think of that you want to point out?
Well, I mean, they, again, a lot of it was, the drumming was sort of random because, we didn't have an idea of let's have old Ringo and young Ringo playing together. That wasn't, I mean, again, we just didn't try to give ourselves the luxury of thinking of ideas that we couldn't ultimately do because, we were limited, but we looked at looking at the becoming familiar with it, looking at the outtakes of Hello Goodbye, and then looking at the footage that Ringo had shot in his studio. We were familiar with the different angles and stuff, and we just sort of thought, well, that the angle that Ringo did from the side and that Hello Goodbye one could actually fit. They could fit. So it was seeing those two angles that gave us the idea of actually custom. Because I mean, what are the chances that in 1967 they're going to get an angle from Ringo? And Ringo's going to complete without not having any idea about how this is all going to go together. Ringo shot himself in the studio from an angle that worked just fine too. I mean, that was complete chance. But you spotted, you look at the footage and you saw those little things that accidentally happen, and you grab them and sing them together. So that the idea of having the two Ringos playing together was something that was just born because we recognised that there's the two angles that in the footage was sort of the same, and we could actually we could blend them. But the chances of those two guys. Well, not two guys, Ringo. When I say two guys, it's actually young and old Ringo. Chances of young and old Ringo shooting footage of in 67 and 2023 that would actually just sandwich together and from the same angle was, I mean, how slim is that? But we got lucky. It's and so the Susie and the Red Stripes, that was just something. I mean, that's in the George, the footage of George. It was from '95, and I just thought I just found it distracting. I mean, I know obviously who Susie and the Red Stripes is. I know why and what it was there for, but I just thought for an average viewer looking at the video of a Beatles song and all that, seeing a drum skin of a band that most of the people would have never heard of, and I just thought that's sort of just going to make people think it's going to make people's brains go in directions that you don't want, because you want them to focus on George, you want them to focus on Paul. You don't want people watching it to be distracted suddenly by, oh, who are they? What was they? You just want to get their minds, it was really it was the distraction factor that made me kind of, that would sort of be something that would throw people's attention off what was happening. So and so that was just I had a copy of the Love drum head that someone done for me. I'm in the office, so I quickly went and got my iPhone and snapped a photo of that and then sent it to the effects guys and said, can you put this over the top of the over the top of the thing? I mean, obviously, if any true Beatle fans know that by the shooting of the Hey Jude promo a few weeks later, they'd painted it over and it was completely red by then. The Love thing with the yellow swirly lines and Love didn't. I mean, that existed seemingly for about two months, and then it was gone because by Hey Jude it had been painted over and I was completely solid red. So and I thought, well, that's a real Beatle obsessive is going to go nuts here, because how did Paul end up with a drum head in a studio that was supposed to have been supposed to have just disappeared in 1968. It's I thought, well, that'll get people's minds going. So it was fun.
Yeah, another great idea.
Darren in here ask some questions. So
yeah, I just want to mention one more thing. When Ringo is taking the drumstick and he's hitting the bass drum while he's also playing.
Now, which shot's that? Sorry, that's from
Hello Goodbye, when he's taking a drumstick and he's hitting the bass drum, the front of the drum, the skin, while Ringo's behind it live. That's
Yeah. Oh, the one, is that the one where Paul's in the foreground with the bass and is that the one where the cymbals are being carried off? Is that's what you mean?
I think that's
right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I enjoyed that a lot too. So.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, that was a tricky shot, though. Well, that particular one that we're talking about, where Paul was in the foreground playing, and and John's wheeling a thing past camera, and cymbals are being taken. That was tricky because that's putting Ringo in there, because that was an angle on Ringo. We didn't really have an angle that had been shot in 2023 that really matched the 1967 angle. We didn't really have it, so we had to. So that's why we couldn't put Ringo's modern drum kit there. We couldn't actually put his real drum kit in the background behind them, because we just didn't have it. It didn't get filmed from that angle. So we had to sort of use the 1967 drums, and then put the older Ringo behind the 67 drum. So that was a bit tricky. And I think even at some point we had to paint one of the sticks, and one of the sticks disappeared behind a drum and somewhere it shouldn't have done. So we had to do a little animated thing. I mean, we just had, that was a real patch up job for because the Ringo elements we had weren't really that great, but we made them work.
Yeah, this goes to show there's a lot of thought put behind everything you do here. So
not thought, no, not too much thinking. It was sitting in the cutting room trying to come up with ideas, and when you got an idea, then trying to make it happen. That was yeah. I wouldn't call it thought particularly, but anyway, it's nice of you to say. I mean, the one thing I did want to do is, as you say, we talked about earlier, is I did feel it was important to get, start with a bit of pathos at the beginning, and then go into the middle section. I saw that middle section, we got to get humor into it, because that's who the Beatles were. They never took themselves that seriously, and if people took them seriously, then they'd send them up. If anyone was saying, all the musicologist guys that would start writing about the music, I mean, they would find that hilariously funny. I mean, when John heard about the lyrics being taught in school, and that led to the Glass Onion song, he sends it up. They just found anyone that took them too seriously to be funny, and I thought, well, that's not, they didn't take themselves funny, and they didn't take themselves seriously. So but one of the ideas, actually interesting to mention on that whole topic, is that the first couple of ideas we had for putting 67 stuff into the modern stuff, it was John and George. It was like, well, okay, we'll put I think it was like the very first idea was the foreshot of them. Put the Ringo and Paul from 2023 and put Hello Goodbye John and George beside them, and that was a slam dunk shot of the four of them together, that was one of the first ideas we had, and then it was quickly James and I said, well, we got to set rules here, because the one thing we didn't want to do is we didn't want all of George and John to be represented by 1967 footage. We didn't want the guys that had passed away to be 67 and with the modern Beatles. It just felt, I just didn't want to relegate John and George to that sort of status of just being old footage. And so that was where we came up with ideas of having young Paul there too, and young Ringo. It became a sort of the basic, what it became, and it wasn't. This was sort of a retrospectively working. It's like these old guys are trying to finish a song, and they're getting gate crashed by the young Beatles. The young Beatles are coming and appearing and sort of hamming it up and playing around, to make fun of these two old guys trying to finish a song. So all four young Beatles are there. They're sort of trying to send them up, and that became the sort of our general thinking. It wasn't just about representing John and George only within the old footage. So.
Right. I just wanted to know, towards the end of the video for Now and Then, there's that footage that you got from Pete Best and Road Best.
Yep. Yes.
How did that happen? Did they approach you? Did you approach them?
No, that was, the way that happened is I saw a bit of that footage in the George Harrison documentary, and then and it was obviously home movie footage, but it was the only stuff in leather jackets. And I read stuff about it online, and I haven't seen any of it online, and people say it's online, but the only bit I'd ever seen was in the George Harrison doc, a few seconds, and I read that it's like 40 odd seconds of it, and it's And so I'm thinking, God, it would be great to get a bit of that, but we wouldn't use the bit that's in the George Harrison. We'll use a different bit of it, but, you know, so it's new, which is why I was saying to people it's unseen and stuff. But then I read people, oh, no, it's been available online for ages, which I mean, I've never seen it. But so anyway, so it was in. So then I contacted Apple, thinking, well, you know, will Apple have that footage? And they said, no, we don't have that. Oh, well, who's got it? Well, he said it's owned by Pete Best, and we can't get involved. We you know, they were very nice, but they just said, look, it's not something we can actually help you with. So Claire Olsen, our producer, picked up the phone and contacted the Best family, you know, and I think she took the rogue and you know, and explained it to him, and they were supportive, and they gave us, you know, I mean, what we did for them, you know, sort of in return, they gave us the whole thing, which I forget what it is, it's 30 or 40 seconds. And we restored it. We restored everything for them. So because they you know, can use it in the museum or whatever they want to use it for. So we gave them a restored version of the entire thing, and we just used the 3 or 4 seconds that we use. You know, that was and they were very nice to deal with. Very nice people.
Okay. I knew I'd seen it before, but it was a nice touch towards the end there.
Yeah, you saw it in the George Harrison one. They had what it is they the guy's got an 8mm camera, and he presses a button and films, and then he stops, and then a bit later on he's filming. He only filmed twice, and so he's filming 2 different songs. And the George Harrison one had a song, the bit that we use actually comes from the other song. And Mark Lewisham figured out what these songs were, because I thought, well, we should. And they're 2 songs that I can't forget their names now. You have to check what he wrote. But they're 2 songs that don't exist on any recording ever. They don't exist on the BBC. They don't exist on bootlegs. They're 2 songs they did in the live show that he thinks because the other artists have done these songs. I forget their names. You know, they're 50s rock songs or whatever, pop songs. And so there's other you know, there's songs that were performed by other artists and recorded by other artists. So Mark Lewisham, he's looked at all the lips and everything, and he's figured out that it must be this song, based on what they're doing in this song. But he names them. I can't remember what they are, but they're 2 songs that the Beatles. There's no existing audio of any description of the Beatles doing those 2 songs. It's strange, because I thought it'd be Long Tall Sally, or I thought it would be something that we know, because it's early 62. It's February 1962. So, you know, I thought, well, and then they're sort of starting to, you know, they're settling down into their set list. But these are 2 songs, 2 random songs that. I mean, I'd never heard of these songs before, but you know, some true sort of. I'm sure that, you know, they are probably quite well known. But as I say, I'm a musically ignorant person, so I haven't heard of most songs before. But anyway, so you know, but yeah, I think Pete writes about it in somewhere in his book, or yeah, it's probably in his book actually. He actually he names the songs.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And at the very end of the video, when you change to black and white, then you've got all the young photos of the Beatles, and then getting younger and younger, which I really love. That was a really nice touch. And then ending with A Hard Day's Night and the bow. At the
well, I was worried about. I didn't know quite how it should end, because obviously it is important, and I had this idea of a bow, and it just happened that Danny Harrison came to New Zealand at the time. It was about probably in March this year, February or March this year, and we're gonna, and Danny came around to dinner, and we were talking about it, you know, because we hadn't really got much. I mean, we didn't have much to show him or anything. It was just like, you know, oh, he came. We did have the 14 hours of 1995 footage. So we sat down with him and was watching some of that, which he really enjoyed. Because he hadn't seen it before, so that was fun to show him some of that. But he came around for dinner, and I sort of said, I've got this ending. What did you think about this idea for the ending? And I you know, sort of talked about the bow, and they fade out, and they bow and they fade away. It's their job is, and Danny immediately teared up and was holding back tears, and said, God, it's making me cry just from what you're describing. And then I thought, okay, well, if it's making you cry now, then that's going to work, you know, because when you think of these, you sort of end up not having quite the perspective on it. But so that's so at that point we thought, yeah, we'll definitely go that way. And then it was a case of finding the best bow, because the idea was, and of all the bows we looked at, A Hard Day's Night was the nicest quality, clean, you know, straightforward. It was. Or every other bow we looked at from every other bloody thing we could find, was sort of not. It was not quite. Didn't really feel right. It was all a bit. You know, it wasn't quite the same feeling. But Hard Day's Night it nailed the bell for us. It was good.
Okay. Perfect way to end that video.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it does. We just add it's like their final bow. They've done their job.
Okay.
In story, but of course, I was saying this. Of course, it's not really. I mean, it feels like that, but the Beatles are still going to be here tomorrow and the next day and next week. They're not actually going anywhere. We mustn't forget that. We don't. We can feel sad that they're saying goodbye, but they're around. They'll always be around. So yeah. So right. Grab an album and play it and cheer yourselves up because they're not going anywhere. Yeah.
I'm Paul Muldoon, a poet who, over the past several years, has had the good fortune to record hours of conversations with one of the world's greatest songwriters, Sir Paul McCartney, reflecting on everything from the Beatles to Wings. The result is our new podcast, McCartney, A Life in Lyrics. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Darren, your turn.
There's a point, Peter, early in the video where we see John looking off onto the sunset.
Yeah.
And I think my initial feeling was that was an actor or someone or some sort of image to made to look like John looking off towards the sunset, but that was John from what I understand.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about that one shot? Fitting that in, where did it come from, and how did you work that into the whole idea?
Well, that was in terms of the John element of the thing. That was a sort of third shot. So the first couple of shots of John singing, because we knew we had footage of from '95 of the guys playing, and that we could use as the song was getting underway, and it was that thing I mentioned earlier, that the first sound of John's voice is just the needle on the meter, and I think then we used that a second time. But then, you can't, twice is enough. I mean, 3 times is too many. So the question is, okay, so now we've got to move on from that, and we've got to actually, do something with John that's not. And I did. I mean, by the way, behind the scenes and all of this stuff, I was contacting Sean and asking, have you got, is there any footage of your dad playing the piano in the 70s? I mean, anything. It doesn't have to be now and then. Is there any home movie footage of the pianos? I was trying to sort of see what there was of John from. Because I also wanted to represent John in this opening bit from the 70s. I didn't want to have, in those first few shots of John, I wanted to represent, because the first, I don't know, 45 seconds of it is obviously got Paul and George and Ringo from 1995. And so I wanted, when we do see John, I wanted it to represent John from the late 70s. I didn't want, and they were suggesting using Imagine footage from 71 and all that, and I said no, don't want to do that. I want to have an older John. I want to have an older guy. Because it's more accurate to the sort of the song. And but then it's a bit amazing that there is so little footage of him, of him from the late 70s. And Sean gave me some home movies and stuff that was. Again, not it was hard to find anything in the home movies that was, because again, you want something that's a bit more poetic and stuff. And so home movies, but sort of they're jerky and they're kind of playing around. I mean, the home movies by their nature are not sort of poetry quite in that way. So, and anyway, but I remembered a book. I mean, years and years and years ago. I mean, just 25 years ago, I got a book. 30 years ago. It was a long time ago. When my younger Beatle collecting days, I remembered a book that I had got, which I really liked, which was a photo of John Lennon and Yoko taking Sean to Japan. It was like a Japanese photographer had followed them around, and they're beautiful photos. It was like, it's some of the best photos that I've ever seen from the late 70s. They're gorgeous photos. But I hadn't really looked at. I mean, the book was somewhere in my collection, and I hadn't looked at it for years. And so I remembered it. So I went and found that book again, and it's and I don't know how rare, I mean, how well known it is, but anyway, it's a fantastic, but beautiful pictures all the way through them taking Sean to visit Japan, and I think there's some New York stuff, and a Japanese photographer was a particular photographer was with them taking these photos, really great photos. So I remember that book, and so I was looking through that book just for any ideas, because maybe if we can't find footage, we're going to have to use photos, that was the other, I mean, we don't know. And I came across that photo in that book, and it was John. And what I think it is, I mean, Sean's in it. John was Sean, and I think they're looking out the window of a train. It looks like, because there's a train window that you pull down, and it's got a little logo, and then there's a sunset there. So I think they're actually on a train ride, and they're looking out the window. Is what I think. I mean, it doesn't say in the book, but I think that's where the photo is. So I just looked at that photo. And I thought, oh, that's a really gorgeous image. Why could we do something with that? And so then it became we don't want Sean in it, unfortunately. Sorry, Sean. So we got him out of it. We got rid of the window, of the train windowy thing. We painted all that out. And then it was like, well, but it's still. And then I thought we could zoom out from the sunset. It was something of the shot. And then I thought, well, it'd be nice if it actually wouldn't feel like a photograph. Those photos are. At the end of the day, photos are always those things that you use when you're slightly desperate. You don't sort of. If you can't find footage, you use a photograph. And why don't we make the photograph look like it's footage? And so so the sunset is actually it's a New Zealand sunset. We filmed I mean, it's very similar to what's in the book. You almost feel it's the same, but so the sunset we filmed the water with the sun, and we sort of matched what was in there with actual a real moving sunset. And then John, we cut John out of the photograph. I mean, we got permission from the photographer in Japan. It was very, very nice and very, very helpful. And Sean was great. And we got the high resolution negative for that photo. And we cut John out, and we just animated his photograph. It very, very subtly, very subtly. I mean, we didn't, we just had him moving a little bit. So you'd believe that he's actually being filmed rather than photographed. It's just very subtle. And so that was really that photograph. So what you see is the photograph. It's just moving slightly with the zoom out. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's such a powerful scene, and I think that's the balance there. That then the playfulness comes in throughout the rest of the video. Yeah. So it kind of like breaks what could be an incredibly not depressing, but just a very solemn experience, which then is balanced by all of the footage that you've been talking about, the playfulness of them. When you're because it sounds to me like this video was like a quilt, like you were putting a quilt together, you were patching together pieces, taking from here, taking from there. When you would have a bit of footage that you say, that I really like this, I like what they're doing in this, where then do you decide to put the footage? Were you working with this? Were you putting this video together from beginning to end in chronological order?
No.
Were you sticking things
sticking things in? So we did do a bit of work at the beginning of the beginning of it first. Like one of the early ideas I had, simple enough, was, I mean, when I looked at the footage from 1995. There was and actually, to be honest, some of the 2023 stuff. There was a lot of shots of them tuning up and preparing. Paul and Ringo, and there was actually a couple of shots from '95 of George's hands on the fret. There was a bit of that. So I thought, oh well, let's actually just not jump into the Beatles. Let's jump into let's have 20 seconds of players keep their face, and don't show their faces. Just show their hand, but people are going to recognize often, I mean, people are going to obviously, hopefully recognize who this band might be. But so it was that whole idea of not showing anyone's face at the beginning, just showing, hands and tuning and all that sort of stuff. And then and Ringo's sort of holding the sticks ready, and then so it was, the idea was to show no faces, which was good, because then when John starts singing, there's no face there either. It's a needle. So we, and then suddenly you're sort of revealing people's faces and unveiling it. But so that was it. So we sort of done a little work on that, and then the rest of it was black. And then I think the next thing that happened is we thought about the idea of putting the four guys together, in the line. So now that, because we wanted Ringo and Paul to be singing, there's only really a couple of spots they could be in that, but in the exact sections of the bit was song where they're singing. So we sort of put that little roughly mocked up that shot with the four of them, and we plopped that in the spot, the only spot it can really be. We found two spots, and so you've still got all these holes, and then it was a question of just patching up. And then the orchestra came next. We started to look at the orchestra stuff, and as I was saying earlier, the 67 and figuring out ways to blend it all. So, and that was out, and so we started to piece all that together. But yeah, at some point you're in a patchwork. It's like bits of picture for 2 or 3 seconds, bits of black, bits of picture. It's all over, and then you just slowly sort of patching up the holes. Yeah.
About how long would you say the entire project took? Of the video, just the video itself.
I sort of when I had that phone call and didn't. I mean, when I had the phone call and they asked me the second phone call, and I'm not saying I agreed to do it because I never did. But anyway, when I had that phone call, I said, "Oh, well, let me have a look at it." I think that was January that happened, and we probably finished it about 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, or something. Because some of it was we just didn't. We wanted to get, because the effects, even though the effects and the visual effects are as simple as any visual effects can possibly be, where you're literally taking, you're cutting out somebody from this bit of film and you're pasting them on this bit of film. That's very, very difficult to get looking good, because they were filmed under different lighting, filmed on different film stocks, filmed with different lenses, and you just cut them out and stick them on. It just looks like crap. It looks like somebody who's cut a picture of a magazine and glued it onto it. I mean, it just looks terrible. So I wanted the guys to have we wanted to make sure we had a lot of time spent just to finesse the I mean, there's really subtle things that no one will notice, although I might describe one to you, so you will notice now. There's on that shot, the shot when which you talked about, when Paul's in the foreground with the bass and the cymbals are being taken away, Ringo's behind, and John and Paul and young Paul's there, and they're all sort of John's wheeling the stuff thing. That sort of big long shot. So on that shot, that came the 67. The 67 footage, which we used the background. We used not just John and George and Paul, Ringo. I mean, we sort of used the entire 67 footage, and we just put old Ringo and old Paul into it. But that was shot with a star filter on the camera, like in those days it was a filter you used to put on the camera, and every bright bit of light that you pinged with the lens would sort of split into 4 little stars. I remember buying them when I was a kid. Those star filters to use for my 8mm camera. It was just a simple little and it made a sort of starry thing. And so they had shot in 1967 with a star filter. And so when we put Paul in the foreground with his bass, he's got these shiny bits on his bass. So the guys reproduced the 1967 star filter, and whenever Paul moves his bass around, it pings. The star filter pings on his 2023 bass. So it looks like you've used the same filter. I mean, it was tiny so that no one ever really thinks about. But in a way, the more of that you do, the less fake it becomes. And you just so it was a bit of a struggle to try to get all that looking good. But I mean, you still know what it is that you're looking at. You still know that you're looking at a paste up, but hopefully it's not too distracting. It's not too sort of jarring.
I guess I'm going to segue, Allan and Ken, from the video to the actual song now and then, and Peter's work on the actual demo. But to get into that, I'm curious about the footage that was shot of George, Paul, and Ringo in '95 at Paul's studio. When they did find footage of them working on Real Love and Now and Then.
Yep.
You were able to see, however long they filmed, of a very short recording session, from what I understand. There were just 2 days.
I think it was 3 or 4 days. I'd have to double check that again. I thought it was 3 or 4 days. It's more than 2. It's definitely 3, if not 4 days. I seem to remember George wearing 4 different shirts, but it might have been 3. I'd have to honestly go back and look at it. It's more than two days. It's definitely. It's definitely 3 days and possibly 4.
So they spent a considerable short amount of time on Now and Then, obviously, because it was suspended, the session.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I looked at that footage with that in mind too. George didn't like the song. George, stopped. I mean, all that stuff. I looked at it, and there's no. Well, for starters, they don't just sit there and work on Now and then say, oh, let's forget this, it's crap, and move on to the other one. Or they don't. Or some accounts are we left Now and Then until the end and didn't have time at the end. Well, that's not true either. I mean, no account that I've seen is actually true. What you see in the footage, what you see in the footage is they work on one of the songs in the morning, and then after lunch they might come in and they do some work on the other song, and then the next morning they come in and do a little bit of work on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's definitely not one day. It's not just like one Now and Then session that they kind of try and in a band. It's definitely not the case. And there's not a single moment in it, not a single moment where George exhibits any attitude against the song. I mean, he's trying hard. I mean, he doesn't say, Paul, oh, this is crap, Paul, isn't it? In 1995, I mean, there's no indication from George that he doesn't particularly like the song at all. I mean, look, and so okay, well, that doesn't mean anything. He was on camera, he didn't. But what's actually the only thing that's interesting is at the end of a day. Now it might be the end of day 2. They might have worked on Now and Then, and Real Love, and sort of going from one to the other a bit for the first couple of days, because at the end of the day, which must be at least day 2, at the end of the day they're in the control room listening to some playback of Now and Then. So they're going to saying goodbye to each other to go home, and they're going to come in the next day. And I think Jeff Lynne says, tomorrow we're going to carry on. We'll carry on working on Now and Then tomorrow. And George just says very politely, he's not got no attitude. He says, oh, you know what? Why don't we just put that to one side for the time being and just concentrate on the other one. He doesn't know its name. He just says the other one. And I think Jeff is a Real Love. Oh yeah, Real Love. But it's not like he is saying that because he hates the song. He's just saying that, well, let's start tomorrow on Real Love, and then at some point you might go back to Now and Then. I mean, as it is when they carry on working on Real Love, and I mean, you know what? I mean, I've got my own theory about all that I don't have any clue whether it's true or not. But I kind of think, I mean, Real Love, I think is a lot more compromised as a song than Free as a Bird, in the sense of technically it's compromised. I mean, John's recording seems to sound a lot worse. The demo sounds a lot worse. And if you listen to the mix now, I mean, I thought Free as a Bird, Real Love, I've heard them for years, but if you listen to them now, you sort of realize Real Love is the John track. The John track has got the piano on it, and it's so sort of, and the piano is really loud on Real Love, and so it's impossible to suppress the piano. And I think Paul's trying to play on the top of it to try to sort of disguise it a bit. And then because Jeff is recording the other guys in 1995 pristine clean, he can't really, in the mix, he can't have them pristine clean and have this really kind of rather chaotic demo of John, audio wise there. So it sounds to me, and this is just my theory, I mean, I haven't spoken to him about this, but it sounds to me like on the mix they had to push George and Ringo and Paul from 95. They had to bury them into the demo track. So you really feel that what they were doing in 1995, and I'm talking about Real Love more so than Free as a Bird, was really kind of being hidden because the demo was such a poor quality that they were having to push the 95 stuff into the morass of the sort of demo, and it's sort of, it's a very, and I personally, and they were mixing it as they were recording it, they were listening to stuff, and I personally have a feeling that George was just dissatisfied with I feel that he was possibly dissatisfied, and there's no evidence of this on camera, by the way. It's my theory. I think he might have been dissatisfied with, Free as a Bird was okay. They did that the year before. Real Love, I think, I mean, honestly, with someone who's, with George's standards, of new musical stuff. I mean, I don't think anyone could be happy with the way that Real Love was having to be kind of compromised in that way, just to get something that sounded all right. And I just think George possibly, you know, if anything, it would be like, well, we gave it a shot with Free as a Bird. You know, Real Love has got. Let's just. I mean, I think this is time to walk away from this whole demo idea. I mean, I get that feeling. I get, you know, it's not so much about an attitude about now and then. I get the feeling that George was just feeling that this was a bit of a, you know, they were working hard to try and you know, get a result that they were just always going to be compromised with. It was always, and I think George might have been a bit frustrated at that. I don't know. I mean, again, it's not evidence that's on camera particularly, because he's very friendly and he's funny all the way through the footage. He's very relaxed, but it's I just feel that might be, you know, might be one of the reasons that he just didn't want to. He's two's enough. For three, come on, we did well with Free as a Bird. Real Love isn't. We had to compromise that. I mean, that's just time to call it quits. You know, that's what I feel his attitude was. I mean, and that's just my personal opinion. It's yeah. It's a sort of a subtle difference to what people, other people have said, and it may or may not be true. I don't know. It's anyway.
We know that your involvement, excuse me, with Now and Then, the Red Album, Revolver, which we'll get to, all stemmed from your work with Get Back. At what point did Apple approach you specifically about Now and Then? Was there a moment?
Yep. I had a call from Paul, and it was July last year, July 90. Not in the 90s anymore. July 2022, July last year, and Paul said, I mean, you know, there's a little bit of a prelude to this story that I'll just share it briefly, but it is, you know, it's actually just something that I kind of, because Now and Then, I mean, I had, you know, last year I had heard Now and Then, you know, on demos as everyone else had, you know, sort of in the preceding few years. You know, so I was aware of the song, but however, you know, going back to the anthology in the 1995, 96, when the anthology came out, everyone, you know, at that time, certainly as far as I was concerned, as a Beatles fan, reading everything and listening to everything, I literally just thought there were two songs. Nobody, the existence of a third song back then was you know, from what I was reading, a complete secret. I mean, you guys might have got wind of something, but it was you know, it was only ever two songs. And I was in Los Angeles recording the soundtrack for The Frighteners, the movie I made to The Frighteners. Danny Elfman did the score, and he was recording in the Sony studios in LA. This is about 1996, I guess it was late 95, 96. And anyway, so I went there to sit with him during the recording sessions, you know, because to see if I had any, you know, as the music's being recorded, you can sort of get, you know, things change and make sure I was happy with the music that was being recorded. So it took about 2 weeks or something. And anyway, so Denny has a little sort of group of people that work with him, engineers and different people. And there was one guy that was one of his I think he had a long relationship with Denny's band. You know, was it Oingy Bongy or whatever Denny's band was called. And anyway, Mark, someone or other, his name was Mark someone.
Mark Mothersbaugh.
Mark, sorry.
Was it Mark Mothersbaugh? Could it have been?
No, it doesn't ring a bell. No. But anyway, I mean,
wave bands.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
he was a sort of a sound engineering type of person, from what I understood. Anyway, so I'm just sitting there, and there's Danny, who I knew, and there's 2 or 3 other guys who I don't know, you know, strangers who are Danny sort of people. I mean, some guys transcribing the music sheets. I mean, he's got a little team. And I just, you know, over the course of the days, I chatted to this guy Mark, who was some sort of. And I don't know how, I can't remember now, it was a long time ago, 1996. And anyway, it just happened to swing around that he hadn't been involved with the anthology, the songs. And I was amazed, because I'd never met anyone in my life that actually worked with the Beatles or on Beatles. I mean, I'd never actually spoken to anybody that had anything to do with the Beatles. It was the first time ever. I said, really? But then I didn't want to be too much of a fan. So anyway, but I was trying to be cool. But anyway, and he worked for he worked for Jeff Lynne. You know, he was hired by Jeff Lynne to clean up the demo tapes, and he's the guy that cleaned up the demos as best they could in 1999. 5. I mean, I wish I could speak to him now, because I would have had a million questions to ask him about what they actually did back then for various reasons. But anyway, and so he talked about that a bit, and you're talking about very primitive. The technology in 1995 for doing this sort of stuff was really kind of not good. And but anyway, they did what they could, whatever they could, and you hear the results, and the results are not I don't know, they sort of are what they are. But and then at some point, when after a day or two of working with him, and he didn't talk about this all the time, but at some point I sort of talked to him again about it, and he must have sort of got sort of, he must have realised I'm a bit of a fan or something. So he sort of said to me quietly, he said, one thing that's been kept pretty secret is there was actually a third song. And I said, a third song? Because this was like, at that point, I just had no idea. Because obviously the anthology must have actually been out and released. So, all the anthology, because it wasn't 3, there was only 2, and so that must have happened. It must be 1996. And he said, yeah, and he said, in his opinion, the third song was the best of the 3. He said, I don't know why they didn't do it, because it was, I like that one better than the others. And it was like, oh, immediately you think, oh, gee, what was this? And then I took a day or two later. I didn't say anything else. And then a day or two later, I said to him, oh, by the way, that third song, what was it called? I just wanted to know, And he said, Now and Then. And I'd never heard of it before. And I didn't have any bootlegs or anything of that, Now and Then. But I logged it Now and Then. Now, okay, don't forget that, because I'm the sort of guy that, like, I'll go home and that night I'll try and remember what the song was, and I won't be able to remember its name. But I did a mental thing. Now and Then. Okay, remember the third song Now and Then. And then I just didn't. There's nothing else happened for years and years went by, and then at some point in the last few years, probably the same time as you guys, the demo of Now and Then came out somewhere. I don't know where again, and so I finally got to hear the demo. And this, this was a few years ago, and my first thought was, do you really think this is the best of the 3 by the demo? Sounding like the demo, I didn't. Why does he think that this one's better than Free as a Bird? Was great. I love Free as a Bird, and Real Love, is a good song. But the production of it's compromised. Anyway, I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why he thought it was the best of the 3. But I did. I now knew Now and Then. I now knew what it was, and never expected anything to happen. And then so anyway, now we go to July last year, and Paul calls me. And he says, "Oh, the people they say that's a Mel machine. They call it the Mel machine, the Mel machine. We've actually got another demo of John's that we haven't done, and I'd love to finish it and clean it up. You think you could get this voice? We'd like to, the piano. He's talked about the piano and the voice, and we just like to separate. And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, it's to be honest, that is as simple as it gets for Mel. But where we've developed Mel now, that putting John's voice out was a no-brainer. I mean, it's a sort of that's for Mel. It's you do that in your sleep, that sort of thing. It's not actually hard. So I said, yeah, send it down. He said, now I never asked him the name of the song because I knew I immediately, the second he said it, I thought now and then. But I wasn't going to call Paul out and say, oh, I know what it's called. I just kept my mouth shut. But so I knew that Now and Then was coming, and the song showed up. And we when we put it through Mel, and I mean, there's a little story with that too, actually, which is interesting. For audio people, is that because that was interesting. So anyway, so we put the demo. Paul sent the demo, which is a sort of it wasn't the actual tape. It was a digital copy of the tape he got, and it wasn't any of the work that they had done in '95, except it was the I guess it was the cleaned up one. I'm assuming. I don't know what version we got. The one that Paul had received, and then this guy Mark had done some cleanup, and I'm assuming it was that one we got. We got that. Anyway, so we got that, and I was just thinking, I was so happy, because I've always felt sad about Free as a Bird and Real Love, for the reasons we all know about the reasons. But I always thought that John's performance on these last Beatles songs, he sounds like he's phoning it in, like it sounds like it's on an answer phone. It's a 1990s era answer phone. He's on the other end answer phone. The other guy's in the studio, and he's phoning his vocal. And I just thought, it's such a shame for John to go out with the Beatles in that way, to phone his performance. And it always made me a bit sad, even though we know exactly why that was. so I was thrilled. I thought now is a chance to actually make it sound like John is in the same room as the other three. That was my goal. I said, I thought we can actually use Mel. Maybe this is the song. This is the one of the three which we can finally make him sound like he's in the same room. That would be great. And so we got it. We put it through Mel, and I listened to it, and I was disappointed because it was totally separate. There was no piano, no, it was totally separate. But John's voice was thin. It was fragile. It was just sort of. It didn't have any weight. It didn't have any solidness to it. I was hoping. It certainly didn't sound like he was in a studio, and I was a bit disappointed. So we sent that back to Paul, and he was very happy with it. But I was thinking, oh, that's not. I was a bit late because I just, from personal reasons, wanted to make John sound as good as we could. And then I started to think about it, and I thought, well, hang on, what you got here is Yoko sending Paul, cassette tape. And there's no way that Yoko, when you think about it, is going to send Paul the cassette that John had in his machine, that he had in the tape machine that day. She's not going to do that. She's going to keep that one. That's a must. So she would have made a dub. She would have made a copy. And and honestly, I suspect that the copy was made on a boom box with two cassettes. Like we all used to dub tapes in those days. It was like you put the blank tape in that slot, a thing in there, and you press play, play on one and record on the other, and you made a copy of it. And I think Paul got a copy of that. So now that's going to be, and certainly when you're telling about cassettes in 1995 and being copied like that, I don't think it ever went through a professional studio. I think that's going to reduce the quality. That's what tape does, magnetic tape. So I got in touch with Jonathan Clyde at Apple, and I told him all this. They're very patient because they get all my little theories and they have to sort of nod and. But that, like the fine extra footage from '95. Sometimes I think they feel sorry about who they actually invited on board. But anyway, so I got into Jonathan's ear. I said, look, this is going to be a copy, Jonathan. We got to get a better one. We got to get the one that's in Paul, and it was in John's machine. So Jonathan said, okay, leave it with me. And so Jonathan got in touch with the Lennon archive, and he came back and said, "Yep, we've got another one, which is he thought, Jonathan thought it was the one that was in John's machine, and that was the original." So we got a digital copy of that one. We put that through Mel, and it sounded better. The vocal sounded better, but it was okay, not perfect, not great, but it was better. It was better. Okay, well, at least the theory of it's right. That don't use the dub, use this one. And then Emil, who does Mel with us, he because we put that one through Mel, and Emil says, "Oh, that tape that I've just done, the one that you gave me, you realise there's noise reduction all over there. That you realise it's been processed to hell." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Yeah, it's had all sorts of weird stuff done to it. It's not an original recording." And I said, "Really? It's supposed to be an original recording?" He said, No. And so what I think then happened is that John, okay, you got the cassette in John's machine that was the original. Yoko wants to send one to Paul, send a copy to Paul, and so the Lennon estate or whoever it is decides to try and do a cleanup on it first, to sort of take some of the worst noise out on themselves, and whatever, God knows what way they would have done that. And then they and so that then is the one, but then they don't want to send that to Paul because now they've done all this work on it. They want to keep that one as their own new master. So, and that's why we got sent it when Jonathan asked for it. It's become the sort of the official master original one. So that was made a copy. So we a copy of that one was made for Paul. So that was like 3 generations down. So at that point we cut through and we contacted Sean. We just went straight to Sean and we said, "Sean, they're getting better, but really, can you try and find the actual tape, the cassette that was in your dad's machine, the one that he literally had in the machine that hadn't had anything else done to it?" He said, "Leave it with me." And he went and he found it, and he made a digital copy, sent that to us, and finally that's where we could get a solid, reasonably solid voice. That was getting back to that original one, which if we ever did Real Love and Free as a Bird, which God knows, I hope that we get a chance to do that one day. That we'll have to do that same process, because I bet the same process, the same stages has happened to those tapes as well. Go back, we'll get Sean to find the originals, but so it was just going back through the generations, and each one got better and better, and until we landed on the one that John this cassette that John had in his machine that day.
So not only,
and I also cleared up the myth because I said to Sean, "Oh, by the way, you got that cassette? Can you just see if it's got if written on it is for Paul on the label?" He said, "No, it's not." Yeah. I mean that for Paul thing isn't that's. I mean, if anything, Yoko made a copy of a copy and wanted an assistant to send it to Paul, so she scribbled on it for Paul, meaning send this to Paul. I mean, that's if Paul got a tape that says it had for Paul on it. It wasn't in John's hand. There's no way that John's handwriting. That was John's handwriting. And I don't think, to be fair, Paul's ever said it's John's handwriting. I think people have somehow, taken the story and embellished it. But and if it had for Paul on it, it's simply because, it's a cassette. So you've got to identify it. It's a label. You've got to write in the label. It was like this is a copy that's going to go to Paul. And that's what I think. If there is a for Paul on it, that's what that means. It's nothing to do with John writing for Paul. So I did actually clear that up.
Mm-hmm. Before we throw it to you, Allan. So essentially, not only did you have the opportunity to clean up the demo, you had the opportunity to get the demo, the master, which they didn't have in '95. So it was almost like a double, 2 bits of I don't know how to put it here. You had them dig out the original tape, so you already were working with better tools than they had in '95, and then you were able to work from the master. So it was
well. The thing with Mel, and Emil keeps telling me this, is Mel, the way that Mel the system works, this cleanup. I think it works better if it's fed the original material. Mel doesn't like it if you give it a recording that's had some other noise reduction sort of filtration thing done to it to try to clean it up. Cleaning something up and then putting it, as best you can, and then putting it into Mel doesn't like that. It doesn't do results. What Mel, and I'm talking about Mel as if it's a human being. We're in 2001 Space Odyssey, but it's Mel doesn't like getting like processing, doing its thing on recordings that have been processed. Mel likes the original recording as much as possible. So you got to realize too, just to explain a bit, because I think the tapes were filtered, were played with twice. I think the Lennons, or someone in the Lennon camp had done clean up on them, and I'm presuming it's the same with Free as a Bird and Real Love too, because they were all at the same time. They done a clean up because they wanted to give Paul a better quality, recording. So they sort of try to filter out some noise and filter out whatever they did. And then and then that goes to a copy of that's made goes to Jeff Lynne, who then gets this guy Mark, who I met way back in 1996, who then does more filtration on it. So the thing to realize in those days, the analog, it was analog, it wasn't digital. The analog, clean up the noise reduction, and I was making films back then and trying to clean up bloody airplane noise. I mean, so is it the way it generally worked is that the more. If it was a film with dialogue, actors talking, or even like as a song, if there was noise in the background, the more you suppress that noise, the more it damaged the voice. So sure, you could get rid of an airplane on a voice, or get rid of whatever, but the more you get rid of it, the cleaner, then it's going to compromise the fidelity of the audio. It's just and so there's a limit. You have to get as much out as you can and still think that the fidelity of the voice is actually still okay, because as soon as you start doing any noise reduction on it at all, you are degenerating the voice. And it's just a question of how much do you do. And so when you think about it, those tapes had that done twice. They had it done once in the Dakota, and then someone goes to Jeff Lynne, and it happens again. So, and people are trying to judge it and use their ears and listen to it. So the one that they were cleaning up in the Jeff Lynne days had already been cleaned up, and probably the voice had already been damaged. The quality of the audio by the time they got it, and then they were trying to get rid of some more noise and so it's the attempts in 1995 to do noise reduction definitely damaged the quality of the audio, of the fidelity of the voice track. The voice.
All right, Allan.
So how likely is it that you'll be able to do a revamp of Free as a Bird and Real Love?
Well, I want to, because as I say, I mean, I've always felt very, very, look, I like the songs. I mean, I'm not an person in that regard. But I just, I always just thought it's sad. We know why, but it's sad that John sounds like he's phoning it in, and I just, and so, but that's the way it was, and that's what had to live with that because there wasn't anything better. But now that the technology exists to potentially clean John right up, the potential, if you can get John really clean, and we go back to Sean, we get the original tapes, and hopefully we can get a really great vocal track. Take the piano out. I mean, I think John's piano in any of those songs should ever feature because he was composing a song. He was just trying to work out chords. It was unfair on him to even use the piano playing. He was not doing that as a recording. It was a composing session. We were playing around. So absolutely get rid of the piano. And Paul, I think they did record piano in '95 for those songs. This has gone top of John's. But anyway, if you can get that, then if my suspicion is right, and they had to degenerate George and Paul, their recording, and they had to deliberately damage and deteriorate that in order to bring it down to John's level. And then Free as a Bird, it sounds like they've distorted Paul and George slightly to make it sound a bit fuzzy, to make it sound more like John. I think if you can get John clean, you can get rid of all that stuff that they've done and you can go back to the original tracks of George and Paul, and you could just reinvent those two songs. I mean, they'd still be the same, and it's still sort of basically the same. But I think those tracks would just come to life in a way that they've never been given the chance to, personally. So anyway, that's my theory, and that's what I want to do, because I think that's the Beatles shouldn't have those two songs sitting there in the state they are. If the technology exists to clean them, then obviously they owe it to John. If nothing else, they owe it to John to do it. So I've told this to Apple, everyone. I've told it to Paul. I said to Paul, look, we've got to do it. And so they're all on board with the idea that one day, but there's no plan. I mean, there's no, like, we're not starting on Free as a Bird tomorrow. We don't, there's no talk of us doing Free as a Bird, but they all know that it should be done at some point, and they don't know, just agree. No, none of them said, oh no, leave it the way it is. But I think it's just they have to work out their own internal thing about what their release schedule is, what they want to do with these songs. I mean, they generally, the way that Apple works is they don't generally do something unless they have a reason for it. So in other words, if a reason exists that they can figure out to re-release Free as a Bird and Real Love in a sort of cleaned up fashion, then they'll come to us and say, can you do those songs? They're not really into doing things for the sake of doing things and putting them on a shelf, sort of thing. Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's that type of thing, which is fine. I mean, it's just the way it is. So anyway, I mean, I think there's a, we certainly have a huge desire to do it, and I'm sure that Apple one day will do it, but no hard and fast plan right now.
Maybe they should just do things for the sake of doing them and then release them.
Well, yeah. No, well, I'm in that boat. That's the world I come from. Yeah. In fact, we are doing some stuff like a bit like that now, anyway. But yeah.
After Get Back came out, and also on the show of ours that you were on when we had that little clip demonstrating how the MAL system worked, I think the first word that popped into everyone's mind was Hamburg.
Yeah.
And, there are so many, not just Hamburg, but, all of those TV performances that they gave. There's Paris.
Sure. All the BBC stuff, Live at the Hollywood Bowl could be scrubbed up really nicely now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff that could be, just made kind of fresh, yeah.
So my theory is that being the Beatles guy that you are, you've mentioned to Apple that all this stuff should be done, and are they interested at all?
Well, I mean, I've spoken to them about the Star Club tapes back when we did. Now, just to jump to the end of the story, we haven't done a huge amount on the Star Club tapes since we last spoke, because the Beatles have kept us so busy doing all these other tracks. I mean, we've split in the last year or so. We split like 60, whatever it is, 60 odd Beatles songs. It's like, it takes a time. So the guys that would be working on the Star Club tapes, had to go on to do this work, this flood of stuff that came in. So in a way, we were thwarted by but however, it is what we want to try and do. But there is an interesting story with the Star Club tape, so continue. So I mean, the conversation that I had with Apple way back when I first said, we should try the Star Club tapes. I said, do you guys own the rights to the Star Club tapes? And he said, yeah, we own the rights to it. Like no one can release a Star Club album anymore without all right. But and I said, he said, yeah, we do. And I said, well, can you make a copy of the tape for us, and we'll just try our signature mail. This is one thing where I'm trying to convince people. Let us just have a play around and then have a listen and make up your mind what you want to do. And they were open to the idea of having me play around with it, but they said, well, we don't have the tapes. We don't have any. We have the we fought some court battle or something. I don't quite. And we've now got the copyright. We've got the rights to the Star Club performance, but we don't actually have the original tapes. I said, oh, okay. And so that's when it was a case of let's go through all the bootlegs that are around. And again, Mel doesn't like treat. I know that a lot of people have cleaned up Star Club tapes and they've done filtration and stereo and all that stuff. But Mel doesn't like any of that. Mel gets very annoyed with that sort of stuff. So we want to try. We want to hear the best original sounding recording before all that stuff's done. And it's sort of hard to find. You listen to something even from 1970s, and you don't know what have they done to it. What is real. So anyway, cut a long story short, so during this, we haven't done any work on them since then. But however, things have been happening. So while in the last year or so, while we were working on, I got Claire Olsen, producers. She's very good at doing this sort of thing. She said, well, why don't we just try to track down the original tapes? Who's got them? And I said, I don't know. I don't actually know who's got them. But anyway, so she's a good detective. So she set out. And then a few months, month or two later, she said, I had a really good chat with this guy in Florida called Larry Grossberg, and he's got the Star Club tapes. I said, really? And he said, yeah. Because the idea was, contact the person who's got them and just ask if we can get a digital copy of the tape, of the original tapes, because then that gives us our best chance to do something with them. And she said, well, Larry, Larry's 78 years old, and he's really, he thinks he's done his dash with the Star Club. And to be honest, he can't do anything with them because Apple have now got the rights to it. And he said, and he'd be open if you want to buy the tapes off him. He'd be open to sell them. So for what it was a fairly reasonable price, Larry agreed to sell them to me. So we've actually just bought the Star Club tapes now. We got the original tapes. So, wow. So. That's interesting because and I immediately told Apple. I said I don't want to do anything behind your back. I said, look, those Star Club tapes. Well, we've got them now. So just so you know where they are, they're in a friendly camp, and so I didn't want them to hear through the grapevine that I was working, all that. So anyway, that was okay, cool, okay, that's fine, and so they've only arrived a few weeks ago. Some of the 1/4-inch tape is very moldy. It's very kind of. We're going to have to do some. Unfortunately, the post-production facility I'm at are very good at restoring stuff. So we're going to have to really look at it, and then at some point, so it's all 1/4-inch tapes, and at some point we'll extract whatever there is on those tapes, into a digital format, and that should give Mal the best shot at starting work on it. So that's really all there is and Apple's attitude is, as it's, I don't think there's any desire ever to release the Star Club as any sort of an official Beatles album at all. But they're open-minded enough to say, well, if you want to do this, which I'm doing as a sort of hobby, just as fun, and also to develop Mal too. If you want to do it, sure, we'd be interested in hearing what the results are. And so it's really a question of if we can get a result that is so good that it persuades Apple that it's worth releasing, then that's the point to aim for. And I don't quite know what Apple's standard will be, because so that's where we're at. They're happy for me to play around, and we've got a bit of work to do, and then if we think we can get a really great sound out of it, I'll certainly play it to Apple, and it's entirely up to them. They have the rights, it's entirely up to them if at that point they'd want to do anything with it. But there's no, so that's the attitude that's being taken with the Star Club tapes at the moment. Well, we don't want to do anything, but if you come up with something amazing, well, let's hear it. Let's hear it. That's so yeah.
That would be great. Could you tell us just a bit about how the Mal system is different from all of these other demixing systems that you can get, commercially online, or
Well, I can't tell you anything about those because I don't know anything about them, but I've never used any of them. But I can certainly talk a bit about Mal. And I mean, from what I understand, and this is anecdotally, I think what Mal does is it's really clean. It just comes up with clean separations. Whereas, as I understand it, the other systems, from what I hear, there's artifacts and there's, I mean, I just keep hearing people say, well, they're not perfect. They're not, whereas Mal is actually perfect. You can say that Mal gives you a perfect result. That's what I'm assuming. But I might be being unfair to someone else's system. But what the whole AI, machine learning AI thing with Mal is that, there's two. This is a guy that doesn't know anything explaining it to you guys. But anyway, that's all right. If I don't know anything, I can explain it. There may be other people that don't know anything about computers will understand it. So we're talking the same language. So there's two aspects to it. There's the machine learning, and then there's the AI part of it. So the machine learning aspect of it is the Mal system. It has to learn what instruments sound like. So in other words, if you want to separate, tracks down to the guitars and the bass and the drums and vocal, then it has to learn what those individual sounds sound like. So you've got to feed it examples of that. And so, you've got to find like tracks with just guitars by themselves, clean guitars. And you've got to just input that. And it's not Beatles. It doesn't have to be Beatles. It doesn't have to be anything to do with the songs. It can be any guitar playing. And then that gets fed into the Mal. And if you feed like, 20 hours of examples of guitar playing, then Mal will give you a result. It'll say, okay, I can recognize the guitars. But the more you put into it, the better it gets. That's definitely, I mean, we've witnessed that just ourselves over time, and it's ongoing because we keep feeding it stuff. And if it's instead of 20 hours of guitars, it's got 100 hours of guitars, and you do it, you get a much better result. If it's got 200 hours of guitars, it's going to be better still. It's just the more you can feed it in. And so, and sometimes, I mean, it's literally like with drums, drum playing. It's actually hard to find clean drums anywhere, because that's what Mal's trying to do. Mal's trying to separate his drums from everything else and get them clean. But to actually find recordings of drummers, so you can feed it drums into it to teach it drums is hard, and it's got to be not just a song here and there. I mean, it's got to be dozens and dozens of hours, hundreds of hours. So the guys, in the room where the guys work, there's a drum kit. There's a drum kit in the corner, and they play their own drums. So and hours and hours and hours on end. God knows what they play. I mean, it probably sounds appalling, but they but then Mal's just absorb it, chews up all this stuff. It just learns what drums, every drums, individual snare drums, hi-hats, everything else. Same with guitars, and then you've got to teach it the human voice so it can separate the voices out, and then you can get really specific and teach it what John sounds like and what Paul sounds like. But anyway, and so that AI is not involved in that. That process has nothing to do with AI. That's just the it's like any computer where you just input. You just want to. Input material into your laptop. It's just like just machines just recording stuff that you give it and putting it in a library. And then where the AI comes in is that you then have to say to it, okay, you've got hundreds of hours of guitars, you've got hundreds of hours of drums, you've got hundreds of hours of bass playing. We don't have to explain this to you. You know what that sounds like. So we just want you to. So now we're going to input a Beatles track. A Beatles track, and we want you to just pull the bass playing out. That's what we want. We just want you to give us the bass playing. And so then the AI kicks in, because the AI accesses that library of bass playing. It listens to the Beatles. This is what I'm just going to talk about like as a human being. It listens to the Beatles track. It's got a big library of a couple of 100 hours of bass playing, and it's learned and it listens to that, and it says, okay, well, that's a bass. This is a song. I'm going to pull out the bits, and the AI is the thing. The artificial intelligence aspect of it is the thing that then extracts the bass from the song. On the AI sort of so the library of bass is just is a library. So the artificial intelligence looks at the library. It effectively studies every second of that 200 hours or whatever bass. But being a computer, it can do it in seconds. it knows every nuance of those 200 hours of bass playing, and it listens to the Beatles sing. I have the bass there. I can recognize the bass. I can pull the bass out. So it's the AI that's actually extracting it out for you based on the AI learning what a bass sounds like. So there is an artificial intelligence aspect to it, but it's not, it's not the scary artificial intelligence everyone goes on. It's not the generative artificial intelligence where create me a brand new Beatles song or write me an essay for my school or give me a painting showing a pink hippo dancing a waltz with us. So you can. I mean, there's AI, there's generative AI programs that will get instructions and just create their own. Create something out of thin air. This is not creating anything out of thin air. This particular part of the artificial intelligence of MAL is just simply it listens to all your hundreds of hours of samples. It listens to the song and it extracts it. And it's not generating anything. It's not patching any holes up. It's not. I mean, the AI is not. It's not building any sounds at all. It's just extracting it cleanly out, and it's not replacing any of it. It's not doing. I mean, none of that happens. What you get is the true original playing with no embellishments at all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there has been, Allan.
That's how MAL works. Now I don't know. I don't know about any other system. So yeah.
I have found it very interesting that since Now and Then was first played and was released, and then a week later it came out on record and CD and cassette, that major media outlets were talking about the last Beatles song, Here's Now and Then, and AI was always being plastered. AI's brought the Beatles back once again. I know. And I found that so frustrating and got into a number of skirmishes on Facebook, on social media with people who were like, oh, AI. I was like, there's no AI here. No, all right. And both from Jeff Jones's mouth when he said there's no AI involved. Now here you are, the guy responsible for MAL. Did you find yourself getting frustrated by the misinformation going out?
That was an interview. Media? That was an interview that Paul did to the BBC, where he was promoting his photo exhibition. And look, I mean, Paul and I have had conversations about it, and we just use the term, well, the AI can pull out John's voice, and all that, which it does. It's what it does to sort of. It's an artificial intelligence that knows what a voice sounds like, and that extracts it. So it wasn't Paul's fault, but unfortunately, what Paul probably didn't realize is that it was right at the height of AI, which is still of AI paranoia, AI fear, which is and I'm not saying we don't have anything to be paranoid about. In terms of I'm not talking about the actual root of genuine threat, but it's just the media. It's just one of those moments, those zeitgeist moments, where the media have latched onto AI as the next threat to humanity. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't have an opinion about that, but it's but it's him that Paul was saying something completely innocent, a term that we've been talking, AI with MAL, and he just mentioned it, and that was jumped on. Paul didn't realize it was going to have that effect, and and so that was, and look, once it's a weird thing. Once you have that happens once, it's a story that sits there and never goes away. Right. And it never. Well, I mean, you're going to read stories about this in 20 years' time, and they're trying to talk about AI. I think it's there now, and you can I can talk about it on everything else, but it's not going to. It's not going to make the story go away. I mean, I was what annoyed me too is that I read odd reviews of the video that I made saying that the Beatles were recreated with AI, that that AI was being used to recreate our Beatles, and should we have these fake artificial Beatles, and that sort of annoyed me because it's not a single bit of AI in that video at all. It's old fashioned. You rotoscope, you cut somebody out and you paste them on and you composite it with. It's old fashioned. It's been happening since Disney did. His movies and rotoscope stuff in the 30s is like it's as old as the hills, that technique, and yet even the videos getting branded with this AI tag now. So I mean, it is just the world we're in. I mean, there's a fear generated that the media, obviously talking about a fear of AI but people can't differentiate between benign AI, where the AI is simply it's like doing something totally benign. It's like, here's a jigsaw puzzle. Can you tell me the next piece of it? Or AI, or it's a chess game. I've got a chess game with AI, and the AI is making us moves. Totally benign AI versus a generative AI that's writing new Beatles songs and making them sound like the Beatles, and voices and instruments. That's another. Unfortunately, AI sort of covers the whole spectrum, and people can't differentiate between the different types of AI, different uses. It's just the world we're in. I mean, that's a shame. It's a casualty. It's a casualty of the times, really.
I had read that that you have also restored the original Let It Be film.
Yep.
So that's finished, and is there any plan for that to turn up in our lifetime?
I don't know what Apple's plan is. I try not to sort of interfere with their stuff too much. I mean, I don't. We restored it, which was great, because they had to give their approval, and everyone gave their approval, which is I think just getting the collective Apple, the component, the people involved with Apple to actually all collectively agree to do Let It Be was a victory, but so that was really great, because they hadn't wanted it, but they've kept it sort of. They've thought of it for like 40 years, so it was a breakthrough to actually, and so we restored it. We did a whole lot of really good music tweaking. Michael, he couldn't travel to New Zealand. He was planning to at one stage to sit with us and work on it, but he was in New York, so we were feeding him stuff to look at and approve. And I wasn't particularly involved in it per se, as in just sort of making it just facilitating it, making it all run smoothly. But Michael was signing off on stuff, and Tony Richmond, the DP in LA, was looking at the grade and tweaking it and giving notes on the grade, and I think Giles did a mix of the tracks for again, and I actually think it looks great. I mean, I kind of we sort of learnt the restoration of Let It Be. We applied some lessons that we learned on Get Back. So in my opinion, the restoration actually looks better than Get Back. I mean, there's things that we did with Let It Be that I wish we'd done with Get Back. It just would have made it. It's not. It doesn't look quite so restored, but it's still as good. We sort of learned some lessons on it. So I think Let It Be looks fantastic, and Michael was thrilled, and Michael and I did a commentary track for it a long time ago, like a few months ago, just for sort of like a DVD sort of Blu-ray thing, with the commentary. Michael and I watched it together. He was in New York, I was here, and we were sort of connected, and we played the movie and watched it and just talked about. I mean, it was really just a commentary track with me asking him about the film. I just asked some questions as I watched it, and he was telling really, really great stories, and so there's a commentary track that's in. So certainly Apple are serious, because to actually get us to do a commentary track for a possible future release, it's not just a frivolous thing they're doing. They obviously plan, but I don't. I mean, I haven't heard of any release plans for it.
Something to look forward to. Are you now totally finished with Get Back, or is there a possibility of a longer version still?
Well, I'm never finished with Get Back in my mind, because I think there should be a longer version. So so in my mind, that it's a battle that we haven't won, and we'll still keep sort of plugging away at. So I never give up, and I never say never. So, but no, there's no hard plan. Nobody said anything about extended cuts or anything. I just don't. I don't know.
And this would still be a Disney call, right?
Well, it has to be. I mean, Apple obviously have to agree in the sense that to allow a longer cut of it, but that, and then Disney, but yeah, because I mean, it's ultimately Disney's responsibility to screen it. They've got the license to have Get Back through a period of years. I mean, they don't own Get Back, because it was financed by Apple. Apple paid for Get Back, but there's a license term which I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's 10 years, sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 20 years. You license it, and then that company has a license to actually show it, whether it's on theaters or TV or streaming or whatever. They've got a license. So as a license holder, Disney would have to have a reason to want an extended cut. Now, I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, I mean, I'm never going to give up, and I think I'm sure. Look, if I was a betting man, I'd say one day it is going to happen. But I mean, sometimes these things get tied in with anniversaries. Sometimes somebody wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, in a few months it's going to be the 5th anniversary of Get Back coming out, or the 10th anniversary. So why don't we do a special extended release?" I mean, sometimes these things happen because an anniversary kicks that off and somebody gets the idea. I mean, I hope it's not that long. I hope we can do it sooner than that. But I mean, there's nothing anyone can do about it right now. It is very much I mean, Disney would have to have a reason, a market, because obviously Disney is about the money. I mean, to be blunt, I mean, it's what their job is. They're shareholders. Disney is about the income earning, and so Disney would have to see a future income stream in which an extended cut would be, good for the company, good for their company, good for their for the bottom line, the balance sheets, and so in order to do it. So I don't know, but yeah.
We all thought it was a little odd, right? The way all of a sudden the announcement was made that it was coming out on Blu-ray and DVD. But there weren't going to be any extras, which we had talked about here.
Yeah.
And
that was a battle.
There wasn't going to be any physical release, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, there will be, but you're not getting anything extra. That seems sort of strange when that all of a sudden appeared.
Well, I can tell you why that happened is that when the Get Back deal was done with Disney, they made it very clear to Apple that there will be no DVD, there will be no Blu-ray. That Disney as a company, and this is actually true. Disney as a company have a policy now of no longer releasing Blu-rays and DVDs. So it's like, it's like they don't think there's a market for it anymore. I mean, you can't go and buy and get a Disney film. You'll never be able to get a Disney film on Blu-ray. I mean, they might. There's ones you can get obviously secondhand that have been floating around, that will float around for years to come. But they're not going to be releasing any more Blu-rays, any more DVDs. And they told us that, and it sort of pissed me off a bit. But But then as we were finishing it off, it was and so an extended cut would mean that there would be a extended cut on streaming. I mean, it's not to say you can't do an extended cut. It doesn't have to be an extended version would go onto the streaming. That's where that could be. But anyway, as it was getting as I can't remember what point it was sort of as it was getting finished or made. I mean, I talked to Apple and they said, are you happy about this DVD thing? No, they're not, because Beatle fans like to have things on their shelf. They like to have collections of stuff. And I said, surely this is not. And they said, no, we're not particularly happy. So Apple made one last sort of put pressure on Disney, and they basically said we would really want a Blu-ray and DVD release of Get Back. And this was against the policy. I mean, Disney had a policy in place, that was no longer going to happen. And so Disney agreed. They agreed. Sort of, I wouldn't say they agreed in a reluctant way, but they kind of, agreed out of respect for Apple that they would make an exception and they would release. But of course, once you're into that position where they're agreeing sort of in a slightly begrudging way, there's no way they're going to spend any more money on filling up the DVD with all sorts of nice extras and everything else, because that's going to cost them money. And they don't even want to put a DVD out in the first place. But why would they want to make it even more expensive and add stuff to it? So when they don't even, the reason why they don't want to is they don't think they get sold. They don't think people buy them anymore. And I was saying well, there are, it might be true. I don't know. It might be true of a film, but but Beatle fans are a sort of a community unto themselves, and a lot of Beatle fans are going to buy it. So there is actually a market that Disney might not be thinking about. And so anyway, so that when that was the idea, that was what happened. I mean, it was Disney, agreeing against their corporate policy to make an exception, release a Blu-ray and DVD of Get Back because Apple had requested it, especially. But there was no appetite for it to be explained. And then what happened is what always happens is that they make they strike a DVD or whatever the term is called. They make the DVD copy and they send it to us for approval. I mean, this has happened all the other films have done, and the audio track it comes to us, sign off on it, make sure you're happy, and then we'll push the next thing on. So this thing arrives. We get sent this thing to approve. And it's no good. I mean, the subtitles had all been replaced with big fat subtitles. They'd taken our ones away, and it looked awful. And they also had I don't know, there's something else that happened to the picture that was, they just, they hadn't done, it was a really good job. The audio was, there was a real problem in the 7.1 channel. There was some really distortion. I mean, there was an actual, a physical problem, and Apple heard it and says, there's no way this can come out. And so we go, go to Disney and say, oh, well, hang on, we're going to have to fix this. And it's only then that we get told that they've made 40,000 copies that are on their way to stores. And it was like, well, hang on, you sent this to us for approval, and you've already, it was just like it was a bit frustrating. And so anyway, they got recalled. This was a whole thing that was happening. You remember, I'm sure. They got recalled because there was, it wasn't just a vanity thing of us running. It was actually some serious issues with it that needed fixing, and so they had to so not only had they been reluctantly agreed to make the release of DVD and Blu-ray, they made 40,000 of them, but then they got told to recall them back again. So it was a grim situation, and they did, and then we had to fix it and fix all the problems for them, and we had to get another one to check, make sure that was okay, and then give it to them. And then at that point it sort of came out, and I think any enthusiasm that Disney had to really do much with the release had pretty much evaporated by that point. I mean, so it was a bit of a mess, and to be honest with you, it was a little bit of a mess, that whole release.
Wow.
It's the way things happen. It's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. But it's a shame. I'm a CD guy. I like Blu-rays and DVDs. I feel bad. But so far Disney's the only company that's got that policy. Other films, Warner's and everything else. But I think you get this feeling that I can't believe that we're heading towards the end of the DVD era or the Blu-ray era. That clearly at some point soon they're going to be gone completely. It's like, well, really, wow. The VHSs came and went, Laserdisc came and went, and now we're seeing DVDs and Blu-rays coming and going. It's like,
See, I'm glad that when Disney would release their classic animated films when my kids were little, more times than not, I was buying up those anniversary DVDs. Who knew?
Yep, hang on to them. Yeah, hang on to them. I don't, as far as I'm aware. I mean, Disney have announced that they no longer will be releasing Blu-rays and DVDs. So I'm assuming they're not just talking about their new movies. I'm assuming they're talking about their catalog as well. Yeah. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't think you're going to see any more of their old films coming out on Blu-ray or DVD. No. So hang on to them. Hang on to them. They're going to increase in a value as the years go by, I suspect. So, yeah.
Well, that's a sad thing, because I'm a physical product too.
We all are, yeah.
Well, I can see the shelves behind you guys kind of bear witness to that, don't they?
Getting back to the song now and then, the demo that I had heard all these years had a bridge to it. That wasn't used in the song at all. It was taken out. Do you know why that was?
No, but I can guess. But I've never had a conversation. They are Paul and George and Ringo are working on the bridge in 1995. The bridge is there in 1995, and I think that they were having difficulties with it as well. You could sort of, it just, analyzing that 1995 footage closely would be good. I mean, I've looked at it from a point of view of what can I use for the video. I haven't really gone back into it again to really. Now to sort of look at it with that mind. But I mean, they had the bridge there, and it's and the bridge was sort of, everyone talks about that those couple of lines on the bridge, but the bridge goes on, and John sort of mumbles the line. I mean, it's not really a complete thing. It's just anyway, I don't know. And so that was there, and that was there in 1995. But that was certainly there in 1995. And in 2022, when the song appeared, when Giles sort of, when we did the Mal track with John, we sent it in. Then a few weeks later, we got a mix back from Giles with all the with the Ringo and Paul and everything else on it. The bridge wasn't there, and Ringo and Paul, or as Paul had written that the chorus, because the chorus wasn't part of the original. Now and then we wish you were here with us. That chorus that Ringo and Paul sing together, that wasn't part of the original demo. It was, and that certainly wasn't there in 1995. So I think that section had been taken out, and replaced by this new chorus. And I think that had happened, and that seems to me to be a fairly recent decision that happened in the last, when they resumed work on the song, I think.
Yeah, because I'm so used to that bridge, and I always loved it. And I just figured that John didn't finish the lyrics there, but then Free as a Bird wasn't finished lyrically.
No, they certainly had to edit their way around some of that stuff. And I mean, I guess there's a way they could have used part of the bridge. They could have used because it was some of it's more complete than others. But he sort of rambles on. It's almost like he does an extended version because he's always trying to find his way through it. I mean, I get the whole feeling with Now and Then that it's the first time he's ever put it down on tape, and he's literally playing. I mean, it's a composing session. It's him trying to work stuff out, and he records it, and puts it away, and at some point he's going to come back to it and do work on it at some point. That obviously a point that never happened at some because I mean all of his demos are a bit like that. They get recorded onto his cassette, put in a box or on a shelf somewhere. He moves on to other things, and then a week or two go by, he pulls it off again and sticks it in, does a bit more work. They sort of and there's certainly evidence of multiple takes of Free as a Bird but as far as I'm aware, there's only one take of Now and Then. I mean, it's a question we asked the Lennons, is there any other takes, and they said no, that's the only one we got.
Okay. Now I know that you've said in an interview that you kind of feel like the song was John apologizing to the other Beatles.
Yeah.
Do you really interpret the song that way?
Well, what the Lennon estate told me is they found a sheet of handwritten lyrics of John playing with the lyrics on an apple letterhead paper, and it's the apple letterhead, the paper that he was using, which I guess he had a few that dated from 1973, 1974. And those lyrics then they're the same but different. It definitely feels like he's in his Lost Weekend, and he's writing to Yoko. It feels like it's to Yoko, where he because there's other words I can't remember what they are now, but there's other words that aren't in the finished song where in the demo even that where he's sort of it's almost like I mean in simple terms it's like can I come back again, and can we give it another go, and let's give it it's really the John and in the Lost Weekend appealing to Yoko to actually resume the whole thing. That's what and I don't know whether that was ever recorded. I think it was. It was just him in a hotel or in a house, or scribbling out some words on paper. But it's clearly the genesis of Now and Then. And then when the demo appears, which I guess is I never quite know whether it's 77 or 78, a lot of those lyrics are gone because they no longer mean. I me's not. He's back with Yoko now, so a lot of those lyrics that were are no longer they don't actually work anymore. It's not that particular John has now changed. He's a different John, and the situation's different. And yet probably the song, the melody, probably it just lingers in his head. And so now I think he's going back and revisiting what he remembered as being an interesting idea. A few years later, and my theory is that at that point he, as they used to, all these songs used to develop. I mean, Yellow Submarine started out as in John's mind as a song about his awful childhood. So it's like and it didn't end up that way. So I think that John in the revisited it. That's my guess. And he looked at and there was really reasons why he sort of maybe he's had to tune. I mean, I don't know, this is a demo, but he had to tune his head maybe, and I think and he modified it. He changed it to no longer be about separated from Yoko and I want to come back, because that's not, there's no point singing about that anymore. And I just think that was when you think about the late 70s, that was when he was sort of starting to reconcile with the other guys and starting to he was calming right down. He was sort of growing up finally, a little bit in a way of getting past all the stuff. And I, look, I mean, this is my guess. I mean, everyone has theories, and I, and everyone's entitled to theories, and this is my theory. And it just feels like the song is now no longer him reaching out to Yoko with this particular message. I'd like to come back home again. I think it's him reaching out to his bandmates, and whether it's Paul or the other bandmates, I'm not sure, but reaching out to them and saying, look, whatever happened then, but I just want to let you know that I appreciate that it's all because of you, and I love you, and and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's sort of what now whether that's true or not, I don't think we'll ever know. Most probably we'll probably never know, which is why everyone's entitled to their own interpretation of it. But And so, but that's certainly the interpretation I took when I did the video. And you got to think that's the interpretation that Ringo and Paul, that's what they're doing in that new chorus. We said, when every now and again, I miss you, I wish you could be here with me. I mean, they're clearly singing that to John and George. I mean, they clearly said the chorus is clearly being sung to John and George. So, I mean, I don't know, I mean, who else is it being sung to by those two guys? So, if they're singing to John and George, then and that sort of by default has got John singing to them. They're singing to each other. That's so in a way, whether or not that was John's intention. It certainly wasn't his intention, I don't think, in 73 or 74 when the person, but by 1977, 78, whether that was intention then, I don't know, but it's certainly the way that that song, has ended up being developed. And that's definitely the attitude I took when I did the video. The whole video was based on that approach. I mean, I did say to Paul once, I think, you realize, I think the song's about you and you guys. I think he's writing to you, and Paul wasn't sure. He just said, I thought it was about Yoko. I mean, Paul wasn't really. He wasn't. He didn't necessarily agree with me.
Yeah. I've heard the story about the song that Carl Perkins wrote for Paul.
Yeah.
The whole story about that. There's a line, "Won't you think about me every now and then?" And Paul sang it with him as a duet, and he started to cry. And the reason why, because Carl was told, those are the last words that John said to Paul. So now here's this song, Now and Then, the words are in it. And I think I read that Giles Martin feels like this is a way of John sending a message to Paul. So
it could be. And the other message, which I think they're in the sleeve notes of the single or something, was that George and Olivia were in upstate New York in the late 90s, was it? And they went into a sort of an arty sort of a bric-a-brac shop, and there was local artist had done a little clock, a little sort of handmade sort of clock, and it had the words now and then. And George immediately bought it. And so this would have been after he worked on the song in the anthology and so-called Hate It and everything else. But anyway, so I don't necessarily buy it, but he'd obviously now and then meant something to George at this point, because he'd been sitting there singing it for a couple of days, about 3-4 years earlier, and so George really wanted to buy the clock. He bought it, and then Olivia tells a story that over the years it just the clock sort of ended up, after George passed away, it ended up sort of sitting in an alcove outside the house somewhere, sort of a porchway. And Olivia kept sort of walking past it and thinking, "Oh, I should clean that one day. It's all getting a bit dirty." And then one morning, she said she got up and went for a walk in the garden, and she just felt this urge to go and grab that clock. It's time to give it a clean. And she literally grabbed the clock and was heading back inside when she heard the phone ring. And so she ran. She ran to answer the phone with the clock in her hand, and it was Paul saying that he wanted to finish this song that they started on the anthology. And Olivia, who was around, I mean, she's in the 95 footage. She said, yeah, I remember that song. And Paul, it was called Now and Then. But I'm just not sure, what you feel about how George would feel about me doing that. Would would that be okay? And Olivia looked at the clock in her hand. He said, "I think George is absolutely fine with it. He's absolutely fine with it." That she took that to be a signal from George, So it's whatever. It's interesting.
That could have been a sign.
Yeah. Well, she said that she can't explain why she just grabbed it that morning. She just grabbed it. She had it in her hand when that phone call happened. So yeah. I mean, who knows? But it's so it is. It's like the Paul story with Carl Perkins, and then Olivia with the clock. It's now and then. Yeah.
You've also said in an interview that you don't believe that this necessarily has to be the last Beatles song, and that
that was a conversation with a guy. It was really more him pushing it than me, to be honest. And then he proposed it like it was my idea. I mean, he was saying, well, all that Get Back stuff. There's songs there that you could take George and John off those songs, and Ringo and Paul today could finish them. And I was saying, well, yeah, technically you could, and there is actually some songs, But I mean, the chances of Paul and Ringo doing that, I think that today are virtually nil. I don't think you'll ever see that happening. But technically, because everyone sort of thinks about, well, what other thing is there? What this was a demo. There is some songs from the Get Back, but a couple of some original, and also some rock and roll stuff that technically, if you wanted George playing guitar on something and John singing, so long as the Get Back stuff is pretty scrappy, but there's odd bits that that might be good enough to sort of take them from just them alone, and have Ringo and Paul you have their bit today, and that would become. But I don't. I mean, I doubt whether that's ever going to happen. I was just having a conversation with this guy about the theory of it, but I don't think the actual reality of it is likely to happen at all. Yeah,
I actually agree with you. I mean, they've all been saying that this is the last Beatles song, and I feel like
there's one song. I mean, having said that, there's one song that John does, which I always stuck in my mind. It's that song Madman. That one he does in the Get Back sessions, Madman. I mean, I always thought that was a pretty catchy song. It's sort of partly not really quite finished, but and it's John sort of does it as a thing around, but his vocal was pretty clean. It wasn't too bad, and I can't remember if George was playing on it or not. I mean, he probably is, but anyway, Madman would be, it would be a fun one to get finished. But I mean, I'm not again. I think the chances of it are incredibly slight. But anyway,
sounds a little like Me, Mr. Mustard. That song.
Yeah,
there is always Carnival of Light.
Well, everyone talks about, well, it's not the last song because they've got Carnival of Light, and I don't know anything about Carnival of Light. I've never heard it. I've never spoken to anyone about it. But it's but what I've read about it in the Lewisham book, everything else is that my question would be: is Carnival of Light a song? Is it actually a song? It sounds like a sound effects.
I think so.
From what I've seen described, and it's banging noises, it's making sounds. It's I'm not entirely sure what sort of vocals there is on Carnival of Light. So in terms of it being a song, I don't know whether you could. I'm talking without having a clue about it. I don't know whether from what I read, it doesn't sound like you could even describe it as a song. It's like an avant-garde piece of music.
Right.
Sort of more of a sort of more one of those atmosphere, mood setting sort of things that people rambles on for ages. That the new agey sort of things that people do with the sounds of waterfalls and the nice things and birds and everything. Except this one's the Beatles making sort of loud, whatever they're doing, crashing, banging sounds. But I think it's more of an atmosphere track than a song. I mean, anyway, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I just think the whole wheel is always kind of like, well, sure. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, let's hope that we hear it one day. But I don't think you'd ever describe it as a song. I think it's a song as such.
Every now and then, Paul mentions it, like to tease it. Like it might come out someday.
Well, he teased now and then for a while over the years. He teased, I'm going to finish that song one day. So Paul doesn't tend to talk about things off the top of it. He talks about something. If he mentions it, you sort of know he's actually serious. He's serious about it. He's not so. Yeah. I mean, if Paul said he wants to get it out one day, then I would imagine Paul will get it out one day somehow. So yeah.
Could I run by you a few things that have been recorded that that maybe you can tell us whether or not Mal can clean it up sound wise, and if you think that that Apple would even consider doing this.
Well, I probably can't answer that question because I can't, talk about Apple. But anyway, just ask me what you want. Yep.
All right, the Quarrymen songs. That'll be the day, and in spite of all the day, can that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great to. I mean, look, anything that you tell me, I'm going to get excited about it because I think, wow, it would be really cool to sort of do that. That's where I'm coming from. It's I mean, there's issues with those sorts of recordings and with Star Club and the house that need a bit of work, and we are talking about it because it's not just developing. Because when I talked about the Star Club earlier, I said, well, it's also I'm interested in doing it is to put Mal through its paces because it's by doing. It's by you can develop Mal to or the system to go another step beyond what it does, but it's much better to do it with a real world example, with something that's real, not just a theoretical thing. So so something like the Star Club is really useful because you're dealing with other issues. You see, taking the Star Club and separating the guitars and the vocal. I mean, Mal can do that now. Okay, you can separate all that. You can balance everything. I mean, you can certainly make the Star Club sound better than it's ever sounded before. But then you're still going to be having an echoey hall. You're still going to be having a reverb. You're still going to be having an off mic is one. There's one mic and the fidelity, and as you get further away from the mic, even though you can lift the level up with Mal separate and lift the level up, as you lift the level up, the fidelity of that voice is not going to be as good as it would be if you were singing into a mic. And so I mean, what I'm interested in developing with Mal, and in this part of this whole Star Club thing, I'm hoping we can do it is looking at ways now to be beyond just separation, because that's just separating the instruments is what we can do now. I mean, we can do it now. I'm looking at ways to actually increase the fidelity, to sort of take a lo-fi recording with a cheap microphone, amateur microphone. And this is not just for the Star Club. I mean, as I say, use the Star Club, but it could be applicable to thousands of tracks, thousands of people's of tracks that have been done over the years in different ways. Take a low fidelity recording done on a cheap microphone and actually say, well, okay, how can we make that sound like it's recorded on a really expensive microphone in a studio? Take the same look without, you don't change it, you don't add to it, you don't create anything artificial, but you just take that voice and I hate AI, the brain of things says, well, I know that sounds like it does, but if that was recorded in a studio, I know what it would sound like, and it would sound like this, and it sort of offers it up to you, to where it hasn't added anything to it. It's just sort of change it into a. So I don't look. That theoretically might be possible. So I'm interested in doing that. So yeah. So to answer your question, all those tapes, all those recordings, I think have issues beyond separation of the instruments. And I think, if we can just, I'm hoping in the next few months we can take the whole thing to a level where we're actually increasing the fidelity of the recording, not just the separation, but actually this, the way I mean, in a really simple way, instead of making it sound like it's recorded on the cheap little amateur microphone make it sound like it's recorded on a big expensive studio mic, with all the things. I mean, that's what I mean by that. Just trying to actually sort of up-res the audio quality, as it were. So that's, I mean, at the moment, Mal doesn't do that. Mal separates, and then you just use standard mixing techniques to lift the levels. So if things are low, you can lift them up and get them all balanced and stuff. But you're not improving fidelity particularly. So that I'm certainly interested in taking Mal in that direction. So the in spite of all the danger, would probably need that to really sound like what I imagine it would be cool if it sounded like, because in my mind, all these things, you want them to sound like they would sound if you were in the room with them playing, not the acetate, nothing to do with the acetate that they made. If you were in the room in that place where they did, in spite of all the danger in that guy's bloody front room or whatever it was, if you were sitting in the room there, but you want to try to get it to that level, the point that it sounds like you would have actually heard it in the room, and that's what I'm always have in my head.
Couldn't you use modeling software, like one of those guitars back there is a Line 6 Variax, and it's set up so that it can be they're really specific. It's not just like a Fender Stratocaster, it's a 1954 Fender Stratocaster.
Oh wow.
Yeah. and they also make a thing called a pod, which models different amplifiers. So there should be a way of, say, modeling the kind of mic that you want, or modeling kind of put each of the Mal tracks through that should do it.
No, I mean what I'm talking about isn't it's an idea, it's a sort of it's artificial intelligence, sort of, it's the essence of it, really. This is what you start with, or whether it's an idea of write me an essay about this, or take this demo of John's, and then I want you to take that and I want you to give me that back. I'm giving you that, and what I want in return is this, and you have to describe it, what you want. So I mean that's the essence of this artificial intelligence system, and that's and so the theory of it, it's, I mean, what it tends to be is it's easy to change things if the quality is not improving. So if it's taking the sound of a guitar and making it sound like a pretty guitar, I mean, you can probably do that reasonably easy now. I don't know, but if it's taking a really bad quality and having to increase the quality, that's where I think that you're often struggling, is that it's lifting the sheer level of quality, not changing the sort of the nature of it, but shifting making it sound a lot better than it originally was. I think that's where things struggle a bit at the moment. So, but anyway, it's I've got if you want to talk about some Red albums, I've got a couple of things on my iPad I can play you with Mal that we did on the Red album. It's a little, it's taking Mal a little step further that you probably don't know about. Do you want to hear a little demo? I can just play it. I can play the from my iPad. I mean, this is audio only, but it's not going to be the greatest playing it, over the internet like this, but I think you'll get the idea. So on the So the thing with when we were working on the Red album for majority of the time, we get a 4-track. The Beatles, for most of it. I mean, not the early stuff, not, but they did a lot of it on 4-track. And so what we get from Abbey Road is we get a digital copy of each of the 4 tracks, just as they are in the master tape. And sure, they're 4 separated tracks already, but the problem is that there's multiple things happening on each track. So the rhythm is always got the drums and the bass on the same, and usually there's either guitar or vocals on that track as well. And then you might have a vocal track, but it's got the guitar on it. There's always sort of multiple things. And so really, what Giles wants is just us to take everything and separate it. So I'll play you a little bit of. I've got a little bit of Day Tripper. What I'll do is I'll just jump into the middle of the song somewhere, because where it gets sort of interesting. So, okay. Full disclosure, I'm no longer on the podcast. This is being recorded a couple of days after we finished. So unfortunately, we don't have Ken, Allan and Darren with us anymore for a few minutes. You've just got me solo. Because what I tried to do on the podcast is I tried to give a little demonstration of Mal from my iPad, just holding it up to the laptop while I was playing some Day Tripper tracks. And I didn't realize that there's some sort of a noise reduction thing built into the microphones of the laptops for Zoom calls, I guess, and it removed a lot of the music. And in fact, in some cases, with the lower notes like the bass guitar and things, the guys couldn't hear it at all. So it was next to useless as a demonstration. So I just said I'd just record a little insert like this and we drop it in later. So we will rejoin the podcast in a few minutes, but you're just going to have to put up with me solo for the moment. And there's no intelligent questions coming from the guys. I'm afraid it's just me explaining how this works. But the good news is we fixed the audio, so we should have much better audio now. We've got a sort of a very sophisticated system that actually requires me to wear my glasses, because it's not coming off the iPad anymore. It's all being played internally, and better quality. So anyway, here we go. So Day Tripper, I just thought I would take like 15 seconds, 10 or 15 seconds of the tracks, and just sort of walk you through how we do it and what it sounds like and what sort of results we get. So, I'm just going to jump into the song. I won't play it necessarily from the beginning. It'll be like just jumping into the song, and I won't necessarily play exactly the same piece every time either, because there's not really a lot of point doing that. But here we go. So just remind ourselves what Day Tripper sounds like. This is the original mix. This is the previous mix. So what we get when we're doing when we're helping Giles do the remixing, is we get the original tracks from Abbey Road, sort of the digitized tracks. And in the case of this song, which was recorded in 1965, they were using a 4-track machine. So we have track 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the problem that Giles has always had is that they're not just a single instrument on each track. They contain various different elements, and so that's why over the years, if there's been any stereo mixes of these songs, there's not much chance to do anything like all the drums are on one track, on track number 1, and so if you can't put the drums in the middle, you've got to either have them on the left or right if you're trying to do a stereo. So I'll just play you the tracks, the original tracks, to give you an idea. So track number 1 of the Day Tripper tapes basically is this. It's got drums, bass, and some guitars. So it's the rhythm track. Okay, here we go. So I'm just playing you exactly what has been on these tapes since 1965. So track number 2. Track number 2 doesn't have a lot on it. It's got some guitar. It's also got what we call spill, because they were they seem to be recording some of these instruments live, in the sense that while the guitars were being recorded, the drums were being played, or something like that. So in other words, when they're recording a guitar or a vocal, you're hearing a drum noise from which is going onto a different microphone, but it's still leaking. It's sort of like leakage into the microphone, and we call that spill. Now we don't delete that when we're doing this cleanup work. We put it on its own track, because I think sometimes that Giles might want to use that leakage and that spill to sort of to fatten out the track. I'm not sure. I really don't know, but we always make sure he's got that option. But anyway, here, so this is what's on track number 2. It's some spill, vocal and drum spill, and then it's mainly some guitar. So track number 3 has got some vocals. It's got a bit more spill on it, guitar spill, and it's got a tambourine. Don't forget the tambourine. So it's mainly for vocals, I guess, but the tambourine is playing while the vocals are happening. So let's have a listen. We'll just listen to track number 3 in its existing form.
Got a good reason for taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
So really, the only new instruments on there, or the new elements, are the vocals and the tambourine. The guitar that you're hearing is leakage. It's microphone leakage from the guitar being played for track number 2, for the microphone that's recording track number 2, I guess. So so that technically shouldn't be there, but again, we put it on its own track eventually. The track number 4. This is really, it's not much more than just vocals, some more vocals, and there's some.
Got a good reason for taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
Okay, so I mean, there's very similar vocals on track 3 and 4. I don't know whether they were double tracked, because there are also harmonies as well. I don't know, or whether they just one is one take and another one is another take, and they ended up choosing one. I'm not entirely sure. That might be an original, because the other one's got tambourine baked into it. So maybe this one never got used. I don't know. But anyway, we don't ask these questions. We just simply provide everything for the tracks that we're given. Now, if we go back to what Mel can do, which if you've seen the earlier podcast that we did before Get Back, you sort of understand we can separate the instruments. So track number 1, and we just work through one track at a time. So track number 1, if you remember, had drums, it had bass, and it had some guitar. So let's have a listen to the drums. So we just separate the drums, get rid of the bass and guitar, and just have the drums by themselves. Here we go. And then the bass pulls bass all by itself. So we just pull the bass out of the away, and you don't hear drums anymore or guitar. And there's also guitars on this track as well. So let's have a listen to those. So this is just guitars with no drums and no bass. That sounds a bit like guitar leakage to me. That doesn't sound like guitars. That might be leaking from another track. It's marked as guitar. So sorry, I might have just had that wrong. But anyway, I mean, whatever. We don't want to give. That'll be on its own track. Now, so we've got the bass, we've got the drums, and we do give Giles that guitar thing, whether it's a leakage or from another microphone or the real thing. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because one of the things we've developed with Mal is the ability to split Ringo's drum kit into its different components. Like he plays, a drum kit, and there's different drums that he plays. Now, obviously, Ringo's playing them, as a set. That's what he does. So he never plays like I'm going to play it to you now. But in case Giles wants to, make the drum kit a little, just spread it around a little bit, we give him that option. I don't think this is necessarily that useful, but in some respects, we developed this just for our own use for the software anyway. So whether or not Giles chooses to use it, it's up to him. So let's start. We've got the kick drum. And here we go. Here's the kick drum. And the snare drum. The toms. There's not many toms, but I mean, Ringo does that about 2 or 3 times in a song, and that's it. That's the only tom. So there's just that little flurry of toms. Hi-hats. In the mix, Giles can obviously lift any of these up, just individually raise the volume of them without affecting anything else if he so chooses. And finally, there's the cymbals. Again, like the toms, there's not much cymbal action in the song, but there's just a couple of hits. This is one of them you'll hear. In this particular song, that only happens a couple of times, and that's your cymbals. So that's we can separate all the drums into its components now. In case that is useful. I mean, it's certainly going to be useful for us in the sense of using the software for other things outside of this, going forward. But whether Giles finds it useful at all, I have no idea. I don't know whether he uses the separated drums that much, to be completely honest. So what we'll look at now is track number 2. And that was basically we had some guitar. It had a bunch of spill, like we have tracks for spill, which I won't bother playing. It's just the sort of the off mic stuff. And then this is the main instrument on track number 2, which is a guitar. Track number 3 had another guitar. Now, this, in my ears, this guitar sounds the same as that one. I wonder if there's, again, 2 tracks done and they chose one. I don't think this is John and George. I don't, although I certainly can be corrected. This sounds very similar to that guitar, but it might just be another take. Because sometimes they, these master tapes, they have a record of what they use, and they don't actually. They have elements on the tapes that, in theory, they should wipe them because they don't need them anymore, but they're kind of just left lingering there. On the Yesterday tape, on Paul's song Yesterday, which is a 4-track, there's 2 vocal tracks, 2 entire tracks with just clean vocals, and the other elements are on the other track. So we, I didn't know that Paul double tracked his vocal, but he didn't, because one of those vocal tracks is an earlier take where he actually fluffs the line. and then that gets replaced. That never got used, and that gets replaced by the new version. But instead of wiping the old one and throwing it away, the one where he fluffs it, they sort of just left it on the tape for people to discover in 60 years later. Anyway, so here's the guitar. Oh, there's some guitar spill. Here's a guitar that I think is essentially the same playing. It might just be an alternative take, and then there's a tambourine, but this is guitar with no tambourine. And then there was a tambourine being played at the same time, but it's not being played at the same time anymore. It's got its own track. So here's the tambourine that was there. So the tambourine and guitar are on track 3. They're baked together, but we're able to kind of pull them apart, which it does still make it scrambles my head how this all happens. I don't really know how we can do that, but that gets yanked out. And then track number 4 is vocals mainly. There's a bit of spill, but it's mainly a vocal track. So here are the vocals.
Got a good reason for taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
I'm so sorry. There is also vocals on track number 3 that I didn't play you there as well. But again,
she's a big teaser.
This is track number 3's vocals.
She took me half the.
No, it's not. That's track number 4. Sorry, this is a bit. Okay, now they're going to play track number 3's vocals, which to me sound, pretty much the same as track number 4, the vocals on there. So I don't know whether they're actually doubling them up in the song because they're already harmonising, or whether they just did 2 takes. But here's
got a good reason.
This is what's on track 3.
For taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
Now, one of the things, a bit like the drum kit, we've also been playing around with using this software to separate the harmonies. Now, there's 3-part harmonies on this track. So, in other words, there's 3 Beatles leaning into whether it's their own mic or the same mic, I don't know, but it's all being fed onto the same track. So we've been trying to work out how we can separate the voices. Which is very difficult. And this is I'll play you what it sounds like. It's not absolutely perfect yet, but it's worth a listen because it's getting there. To actually go into those harmonies and just pull them apart into their component pieces. It's quite fun to guess who's who. I mean, this is clearly John's track. This is John's, I would imagine. And then I'm not sure about George and Paul. I'll play them and you can see. So this is John.
Got a good reason for taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
So the second vocal track is it's either George or Paul. I can't make up my mind. Because there's three. So there's another one. So this is another, and I know that three of the Beatles come in on the Day Tripper part. It's a 3-part harmony, but there's two for a little bit of time here, and then the third one. But this is B, and see if you can figure out which one this is. Sounds like Paul one moment, and then George another moment.
For taking the easy way out. For taking the easy way out now. It's river, a one-way ticket, yeah. How long to find out? And I found out.
I'd vote George on that one if I had to. If I was forced to, which I'm not, but anyway, I figure it out. And this is the third vocal track, which is the high end, because they sort of take low, middle, and high. This is the high part of it. Now there might be some silences because sometimes these vocal tracks haven't got anything on them until the moment happens. So forgive me if it's a bit quiet for a moment or two. Let's have a listen. Coming. It's coming up in a minute. So this is while you. That's kind of but that's the 3-part harmony there, and then I'm just playing it a little bit. There's other sections, but that's I don't know. Is that Paul or George? Because they all have to be. It can't be double. They can't be double tracking because in the sense it's all on one track, originally one vocal track, so they must all be singing at the same time. So it's got to be one or the other. And anyway, that's Day Tripper. And then just to remind ourselves, this is the new mix that was done. Now this is just coming. I don't know. This is probably going to sound pretty horrible coming through whatever system you're listening to, but it's not the way to hear the new mixes, I can assure you. But this is the end result of Giles having control over each of those individual tracks.
Got a good reason for taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. It was a day tripper, one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
I mean, there's also another vote. I played you the separated vocals on track number 4. There's also the vocal track on track 3 that we also separated. I didn't play those because they sound very, quite similar to track number 3. So I didn't bother playing those ones. But there's also those exist. I mean, it sounds like they might be doubling up the vocals. Like double tracking John for a moment in there. I'm not sure. I don't know. My ears are not good enough for this, but other people are experts, and I can only hand it over to them anyway to tell us exactly what happened on this track. But this is sort of what happens. We get 4 tracks from EMI, and we separate them into as many components as we need to let Giles have control over the mix. And I'm now going to hand you back to the podcast. You'll be pleased to know we've got some people that know what they're talking about to come on the screen again now. So Ken and Allan and Darren. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go.
So it's going to pull apart harmonies. It's going to pull apart if there were 3 guitars on a track. You can listen to each one individually.
Yeah, well, we can, when the drums, we're able to do that. Now, to be honest with you, we're doing this because we just want to develop Mal. And we send it all to Giles. I don't think that Giles finds separated drum kit particularly useful. He's not going to spread Ringo's kit out so it's 20 feet wide across the speakers. There's And harmonies, I don't think he's interested in having, you know, John singing on one speaker and Paul singing on the other. I mean, some of this stuff is not because Giles is asking us for it, and I'm not particularly sure what, you know, if he even really used the separations, you know, for his stuff. But we're just doing it to develop Mel. You know, as we do this stuff, we sort of try to improve Mel all the time. So, yeah.
Do you have any idea what happened to "I Am the Walrus"?
I'm the Walrus sounds great. I was having a listen to the Mel stuff the other day. I don't have it on here, but yeah, we pulled apart "I'm the Walrus." We pulled apart all the radio voices, separated, and then we got the radio track, and then we even separated the radio track. So we separated voices and music. We sort of broke the radio track down into components. So yeah, we pulled "I'm the Walrus" totally apart. It's an incredible song to listen to each part. It's like totally unlike anything you've ever heard before. You appreciate, you know, what the hell do these guys think they were doing? You listen to each of these tracks, and you just don't have a clue how they're going to turn this into a song, and they're all layered together. It's you know, it's a classic song. It's I mean, I should have got brought that one along to play you. "I'm the Walrus" is amazing. I mean, I'm sure there's sort of musicologists studying the Beatles music would love to hear some of this stuff and analyze it, because it is. You know, they had a choir in "I'm the Walrus," you know, a professional choir. I guess they, you know, would normally sing Handel and classical music, and they brought them in, and the choir is making the weirdest sort of sound, the weirdest sounds. They're just doing these sort of weird vocal noises that almost sound like you're speeding the tape up or slowing it down or playing reverse, but it's not. It's actually the choir doing it themselves. So you pull the choir out by itself, and God, they're doing incredible things with the choir. You just think, oh, I never actually knew that. I never knew that. You know, it's really, really, really interesting.
The Giles seems to have buried the Shakespeare at the end.
I've not heard the finished mix, to be honest. The Red and Blue albums just were released here yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to hear them all. I mean, they did send me a copy. They only just arrived, so I haven't sat down, and I'm too busy talking to you guys. I could play it now, and which I do want to do, but I haven't listened to the final mix, but I listened to the components, because we obviously don't do any mixing. We just do separate it down, yeah. And so if we mix it, you know, in our system after we split it, we put it all together, it would just sound like the original track. I mean, it wouldn't be, because we don't mix it, so we just send Giles all the different tracks. So, you know, "I'm the Walrus," which is on 4 tracks plus a fifth. The radio thing is on a 5th track, because what they seem to have done, I mean, you probably know this, or you know, but listening to it, what seems to have happened is they recorded the song on 4 tracks, so they had no more tracks left, and so it seemed like they then made a dub. They made a dub of the 4 tracks onto another, or they dubbed it down to 4 onto the 2 to make the master. And it's during that process that the radio was brought in. They sort of brought it in at the last minute, at the very end. It's not a part of the song that's there under their control that they can change. It's not, because there is only 4 tracks, and the radio is on track number 5. And we think that was, you know, the 4 must have been mixed to start the process of making a master, you know, the finished master, probably mixed from 4 to 2, I guess, if it's stereo. I don't know if it was mixed in stereo, but 4 to 2. And while they were doing the crash down from 4 to 2, they fed the radio in live as well, you know, as that was actually happening. So, you know, it was done as a pretty a haphazard way. You wonder how many times they did it before they got a radio thing that they liked. Because, I mean, or was it the first time lucky? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Peter, you were another part of this whole puzzle, and Mal coming out of the Get Back film was that you were asked to help Giles with the masters of Revolver and the box set. And I'm assuming that then led to, listen, can you work on all of these songs? Because we're going to redo the Red and Blue collections, which are now out. What was the situation that Giles found with Revolver? Can you explain that he came to you to try? Is it to work on those?
Or it was Apple? I can't remember if it was Apple or Giles, but yeah, I mean, after Get Back, when Mel, when they, you know, they sort of, you know, because they had to sort of realize what Mel could. I mean, we were just doing it in New Zealand and separating it and to Get Back, and then when Giles and you know in particular actually understood what we were doing, he was really impressed, and I think he immediately I mean, yeah, I mean, it would have been Giles, no one else. He would have immediately thought, well, they keep wanting me to do a Revolver, a remix, and I tell them what's the point, because it's I can't. I mean, he was always reluctant because he didn't have all the components for it that he felt he needed to do. Because a remix should be a remix. You can remaster it and make it sound sharper and cleaner, but actually remix it. And so I think Giles, hearing what we did on Get Back, suddenly spurred his mind, saying, well, I've always told them you can't do Revolver, and the others, but I think we can now. So I think it was suddenly, hey, let's that Revolver suddenly was the thing to do, and I think that probably was certainly driven by Giles going to Apple and saying, what they're doing in New Zealand, we could now, the Revolver could have a remix finally, and Apple saying, yeah, let's do it. I think it was between the two of them, and we just get asked to do it, and we start shooting through things. I mean, when we did Revolver, and then we and that's sort of the end of last year, was it? I can't remember, the end of last year, and then we Christmas came and went, and then suddenly in the new year, January or something, we had a call from Apple saying, oh, we've got you can use some more songs for us, and and I was thinking, oh, it's going to be the next album, the next box set, but the next of the release albums, and it turned out to be and I said, well, how many tracks you got? About 60 tracks. What? Really? What the hell is that? And then they said it was the red and blue, which I was surprised. I was surprised that they went to the red and blue, but I was pleased in a way, because I'm one of the generation that was the first album, the first Beatles album I bought. I'm one of the generation that got introduced to the Beatles through the red and blue album. So I've always had a soft spot for it.
So are all the songs from Rubber Soul now? Did you isolate all the tracks and send them to Giles? I mean, many of them are. I mean,
well, a lot of them are on the Red album. I think we did half of it, and I think the guys may have done the other ones. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I don't know of any plans to do in terms of Revolve, but then I don't know any plans. I mean, if they're releasing a box set next year, I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't really, I don't ask them, and they tell me when they've got work that they want us to do, but I think I can't remember. I think they might have just done the rest of Revolver. I mean, we certainly did the Revolver tracks that are on the Red album, which I think is about half the album. So I mean, Revolver is not going to. It would be easy enough if the other tracks weren't done and banked, then they would be very easy for us to do for them. I mean, I mean, it sounds awful, but none of this stuff is really particularly hard for us anymore now. I mean, it takes time, but it's all. At least we're not struggling. In the old days, we were sort of we do separations and they wouldn't be right. We have to figure out. So we were trying to build the system and patch it together, as we were trying to do these tracks. But now it's pretty reliable, pretty dependable, and basic. It's basic functions. And so these albums, we can go work our way through the rest of the Beatles albums fine. But it's up to them just to say, here's the tracks. Because they have to dig the tracks out of Abbey Road and make a digital copy of all four, of its 4 tracks and send them to us. So they have to sort of make that decision themselves, and then we can't do anything till we get the tracks. Right. So there's no, as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard of what if there's a box set next year, at the end of next year. What if there is one and two, if what that would be. But I would hope Revolver. I'm also hoping at some point they're going to do the 2 missing 60, 67, 68, Magical Mystery Tour and Yellow Submarine. I mean, whether or not they do them separately or they do it like a combined movie, movie box set of those 2 films together. But those. But again, some of those songs. Some of them are now on the Blue album. Some of those songs. So it's sort of almost being done sort of by default, to some degree.
And Apple told you which of the songs that are on Red and Blue, and maybe some of the ones that they were going to add, gave you the ones they specifically wanted worked on, right?
Oh yeah. We get the masters from the Red and Blue, and then there's these extra songs we want you to do, and we get the extra songs. It's fine. As far as I'm concerned, they should have added 20 songs. It should be a 4-disc set, not a 3-disc set. When you think of some songs that aren't on there, but then I don't know. It's how much of a definitive, best of the Beatles type thing do you do? It's hard. You don't. It's a shame that if I Fell isn't there from Hard Day's Night, because I think it's a great song. And so I miss that one being there. And I mean, look, everyone you could name everyone songs that aren't there that should be there, but well, when I say should be there, but we'd like to be there. Personally, we'd like to be there, but yeah, I guess I guess a definitive set of the best of the Beatles would be the original 13 albums in a box set. So here you go. This is the best of the Beatles. How do you actually do anything other than that? It's yeah.
So were all the bonus songs chosen by Apple, or was that more?
Yeah. They certainly, we had no input into it at all. But anyway, I had no. They didn't ask me, and if I did offer an opinion, they would have. They're all that stuff's they're cool. Yep. Nothing to do with us. So we just get the tracks. We literally just get sent tracks and say, "Can you do this? Can you do that?" Yeah. Yep.
So how are we doing on time, Peter? Are you?
How are we doing on time? Are we at the 7 hour mark? We got to break the record down. Are we at 7 hours yet? No. I mean, no. I'm fine. I mean, you guys should just wrap it up whenever you want to, whenever you think you've said enough. I mean, I've covered a lot of the things I thought would be worth talking about. I was thinking about going into it. What can I talk about with you guys? That's interesting. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot left actually, to be honest. I mean, we covered everything. Let it be, the separations now and then, yeah. I mean, Get Back, extended cuts, Star Club. We talked about. I mean, there's not much else left.
The impression that Ken and I were both at an Apple like a press listening session for Now and Then, where and Jeff, obviously we were both at the New York one, Ken and I, and that was when Jeff told everybody informally, AI had nothing to do with any of this, or please don't leak any of the information you're going to learn here, or you'll never be invited back to an Apple event. And he played Now and Then, he played the video, he played the documentary, the 12-minute documentary film, and some selections, a handful from Red and Blue. I have them written down which ones, but just a handful of them. And the impression I got that day was that Apple's got some plans for more stuff, but he's very vague for the future. Other things.
Sure. Look, I'm assuming, and it's only an assumption. I'm making it as much as you guys can make an assumption. I mean, I'm assuming they're going to want to have a Giles remaster remix of all their albums. I mean, I'm assuming that's what they'll do. Right. And people say, well, there's no point doing the box set of Please Please Me or with the Beatles, the early ones, because what else is there? But there is the alternative track. There's the breakdowns. There's sort of the I don't know how many alternative versions there are of that stuff. I don't know, and obviously a lot of those songs, there aren't really demos, because the demos were set with Hamburg and the Cavern Club, and all those were effectively the demos for some of those songs. They weren't actually, they didn't need demos, but I mean, but I'm assuming there's. I mean, I remember when bootlegs came out on CD for the first time years ago. There was the first sort of CD bootlegs I heard after buying albums was some outtakes from really early albums. I forget what they were now. Thank You Girl. I mean, I don't know, some stuff from really early albums, and they were pristine, and they were take 3 breaks down, take 4 somebody fluffs the thing, take 5. So, they were a lot of really. I mean, at the time it was amazing stuff to hear, and it was really great quality. So there's certainly, I mean, a box set could certainly contain that type of material. This is the songs made up of take 8, and here's 3 of the early takes, and this is how that developed. This is the first time they ran through it. I mean, it's certainly there's no reason why the early albums couldn't have that sort of type of material. I don't know how much survives from the Love Me Do album, Mike, because you get the feeling that the master tape is there, and I don't know if anything else much. I don't know if they kept it, because I think Love Me Do they were wiping, because the Beatles were a risk rather than a reward at that point. They were they record them, and then the second they left, they would, any spare tape they had, they would wipe and use for the next person. So I literally don't know how many alternative takes of anything there are in the vault still from the first album. So maybe that's a problem. But I think from the second album,
there is a bunch that's been bootlegged. So
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
So they have plenty of stuff they could put out, and
yeah. I mean, I don't really buy. I know people say, well, there's no point doing the early ones on box sets because what is it? I mean, I think there is. I mean, there's just some of those early bootlegs I heard with the essentially just breakdowns and fluffs and right. And them talking to each other in the studio and starting again. I mean, they were fun. They were fun to hear, and I mean, stuff's great.
I would imagine the master tapes, though, assuming whatever they have and whatever still exists and whatever they're using could also benefit from Mal's treatment, because everything was sort of bumped into the least amount of tracks. How many did they have at the beginning?
Well, on Love Me Do, they had one. I mean, Love Me Do it survives as a mono master, and it's never been anything else other than a mono. And then it was put through a fake stereo thing at some point. For some point, but there's never. I mean, there isn't even a 2-track version of Love Me Do. Love Me Do, the master and the vault, the only one they have is a mono recording. But then I think I don't know whether that's true of please P.S. I Love You from that same station. I don't know. But then I think they then have it. I think maybe there's some 2-track stuff and then they go into 4-track reasonably quickly. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember, but they go into 4-track certainly by the second or third album, don't they?
I Want to Hold Your
Hand of With the Beatles is 4-track. I think just Money and then I Want to Hold Your Hand and possibly This Boy were also 4-track. And then From Hard Day's Night On was 4-track until partway into the White Album, and then it became 8-track.
Yeah, but to answer your question, Darren, I mean, look, I mean, I guess we're talking about two slightly different things. You could put Mal, all the songs from any of those albums through Mal and do a remix of the album. But I mean, I was talking about box sets really. That's where it's sort of that's sort of the annual or whatever release of the box set of an album. So, and talking about the bonus material, all the extra material. But certainly, there's nothing to stop just an album being done for sure. Yeah.
Even if all you put on there were the outtakes, there are fans that recognize everything as historical importance.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love hearing that stuff. When I heard those on bootleg for years and years ago, I mean, I couldn't believe my ears. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. It sounded like you were in the studio with them and you were hearing all the stuff. And I just sounded it was just just like sort of people talk about Get Back, you're a fly on the wall, and it's great to see the Beatles fly on the wall. Well, in a way, those outtakes make you a fly on the wall in the recording session too. I mean, if it's a fly on the wall experience that people enjoy, then having a take 3 and they get halfway through and they fluff and John makes a rude comment to Paul about something he did wrong and all that, and then they carry on take 4. That's a fly on the wall, and that's fun. It doesn't have to be, because I know on Revolver a lot of the alternatives were sort of interesting from a musical point of view. The development of the song musically and speed. But if it's just simply them trying to nail it and it takes them 6 takes to get it right, I mean that's still interesting, fun, and fly on the wall stuff. If you want to be
right,
the Beatles, I mean, that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, my attitude to these remixes, and I don't have a strong opinion about it. Is that people obviously have remixes. Should they not? And then, I mean, to me, it's just I talked about this with Giles. Like George Martin was in the recording booth. They were in the studio downstairs. They're performing. And I mean, let's just assume it's early one, and they're sort of all performing as a group. They're performing. It's being sent up the cables to George's desk. It says 1962 or 63 equipment, going through 1963 valves and being processed valves, and then he's having to use that, and that's what the sound he gets, and then he's got to make masters that have to be then sent to a plant to cut the vinyl, and they have compression, because if something was too loud, if the bass was too low, then the needle apparently would just jump out of the groove. Play it. So they had real technical constraints of what they could deliver to the cutting plant, because then they had to, and the Beatles were always trying to push the limit of improving the quality of it. But it was, So anyway, so those are the albums that we all know and love. The result of all that, and they're not, they're going to always be there. And I always think when they're releasing a box set, it's great if they actually put the original one on there as well, because they're not. There's no attempt to hide them. But then, to me, what these remixes are, in my mind, is that you're there, and George Martin's doing his thing, and they're performing, and he's going through this process, which is going to result in the vinyl. but you're invited to go down into the studio and sit in the corner, and while they're performing in the studio, have a listen to these songs. Same performance as George Martin's getting. You're hearing it actually in the room with the band playing in the studio. So you're just, it's like the same song from a different perspective. Instead of you hearing it, the end result of all the 60s, the technical compromises that had to be made. But and people adore those songs. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. That's what they, George Martin was a fantastic at being able to make those sound really great. But an alternative experience is to go and sit in the recording studio while they're being recorded and have a listen to how they sound there. And that to me is just offering you it's not replacing something. It's simply offering you a different way to experience that performance. Instead of buying a vinyl in the street, you've been invited into the studio to sit and have them. And believe me, that you sitting in that studio, they would sound very different to what you get on the vinyl. They would sound very, very different. And to me, that's what these remixes are. They're trying to, you're actually able to capture that sort of that live sound.
Right.
And the studio sound before it hits the valves, before it hits the 60s mixing disc, before it actually comes up and it goes through that process, you're able to see it in its original form, or you're able to hear it in its original form. Now, to me, it's not one doesn't replace the other or anything. It's just it offers you experience it in a whole different way. I mean, that's the way I look at these things.
I think there's a couple of philosophical issues that may hold them back from doing things like a lot of the breakdown outtakes and things like that. I once talked to Paul about this, and he said, I know you guys love this stuff, but I'm the guy who, when you show me a picture that you've taken of me, says, yeah, but my nose looks a little bit big there. I don't really like that one. So it's a little like, and because it's them, they don't look at it the way we do, as like fascinated by it. For them, it was work that they were doing.
Yep.
And
no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Well, I mean, I it could be that attitude is changing a little bit because I read a lot of interviews with whoever it was that was talking and saying, we're never going to release any of our. I think George Martin was saying too, we're never going to release any of our so-called, our rehearsals, anything else, because that was never intended for release. The album, the only performances we wanted, or the only thing we want anyone to hear is the polished, finished thing. And the Beatles have a philosophy of not doing that. And that was how it was in the late 80s or the 90s, I remember, and then things change. And I just think maybe now it's become more historical. I think there's more of an appreciation of the history and the artistry of the band. I mean, it's when you hear breakdowns and you hear them working and fixing stuff that you actually, somehow appreciate the skill of the band. I mean, I think Get Back was Get Back has got the messiest stuff in the world. And sure, they kept Let It Be off the shelves for 40 years or maybe, but Get Back, everyone loved the fact that, they didn't judge them at this rehearsal of Get Back, it sounds awful, or they're playing several, but they just loved actually understanding how you constructed these things. You don't go to the finished song and right at the beginning, you work your way towards it. And so I think maybe there's just a general change in sort of historical interest now. And I think that's probably, I think if you asked Paul now, he would probably sort of feel that way too. It's like, well, it's now history. It's now gone beyond just us as a group releasing, things that we want to release and holding the rest of it back. Is now actually we understand that historically this stuff is kind of interest and important, and I just think there is a philosophical change, maybe just unspoken, that sort of that certainly they have what they're releasing now even just would have been unthinkable 25, 30 years ago, pre-anthology. It would have been unthinkable that this would ever come out, other than a bootleg. So. But things change, attitudes change, and partly they change not because people change their minds, it's because we're living in a world where there's an evolution, and what the Beatles meant in the 70s or 80s, and and also in 2023 it's a whole different thing now. They have a different place, different part to play in history. Therefore, a lot of what they did is of interest, and the Beatles themselves realize that it's of interest. I don't know. I mean, that's what I think is what would be my feeling about it.
Yeah.
And similarly, in terms of the sound of these remixes, I kind of agree with what you were saying, that you feel like you're sitting in the room with the band. But I had a discussion when the White Album remix came out with Chris Thomas, who is an EMI engineer, and he said, I don't like the remix because it doesn't sound like a record.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I said, well, but the thing is, you listen to those guitars and they have a texture that is lost on the record, and you're hearing it sounds like real instruments now. It sounds like a real band that you're right in the middle of. And I like that a lot. And his feeling, and I think not just him, a lot of listeners out there who don't like the remixes feel that, but it's not the experience of sitting in a room with the band. It's a record, and it should sound like a record.
Oh, no, I understand, and that's completely true. They were recording albums and releasing albums, and the album is the sort of the product that they put out, and with all going through the technology. No, I actually and I don't think it's wrong to even think that those are being replaced in any way. It's why I say, I think it's always good if the original one gets released at the same time in the box set. They don't always do that, but I think that's always a very healthy thing. But but I'm saying again, I just don't. I just look at this as a different experience. It's like, hey, if you were in Abbey Road when they were doing one of these things, and they said, oh, they're recording a new song down there. Do you want to go have a do you want to go sit in the studio? You wouldn't say, no, I'm just going to wait for the vinyl. Thanks, I'm a vinyl man. I'll just wait for it to go on sale. You go, yeah, sure. It's just, to me, you're just being offered that opportunity. That's all. It's like, sure, people can like. It's not really about what's better or what's worse, and everybody has their opinions. But I don't listen to these things judging comparing it to the vinyl. I just think, oh well, I'm now going to have a listen to this as if I'm in the room. I don't,
right.
And the vinyl, the version that was released on vinyl exists and it's been remastered. It's been remastered in 2009 or something. All those ones, and they were as clean as they can be, and that's and that's cool, and they're there, and that's fine. And now I'm just going to have a slightly different experience. That's how I view it. I think going into it, you just don't want to go into it in a combative way. I don't do that because it's not much fun. I don't want to do that with the Beatles. I want to go in there, say, oh, great, okay, we got that, and now I can get to hear it in the studio. Yeah, it's great. Also, it's all cool. To me, it's all good. It's all great.
The purists feel like it's revisionist history going back and playing around with these tapes and coming up with new mixes and whatnot. Now I want it the way it's supposed to have sounded and the way it sounded back on day one. Nothing, no tinkering done with it. No altering anything. But then there's us.
It's like we went through this on Lord of the Rings. It's like people were, I love those books, and your films come out and it's not how I made it. Your movies didn't show Gondor as I imagine. And it's like, well, we're not forcing you to watch the movies, and we're not making you burn your book. So just enjoy your book. Don't buy a movie ticket, and you'll be absolutely fine. I kind of have a slightly. Well, okay, sure. It's like, well, okay, we can all talk about this, or you can just get on with your life, and you have the option. It's when the option is taken away. It's when you actually remove the ability to have the choice. That's when. But that's certainly not the case here at all.
You said something that I agreed with. I think when the White Album box came out, that I felt they should include the original in the set, because somebody buying it who doesn't really know any better could very well pick up the box set, and they're getting a whole new, different look from what they were familiar with. Have the original there, put the new mixes in there as well, and then you have a complete.
I thought there was one or two of these box sets where they have done it. Have they done it?
It's been done by other bands, and it wasn't done with the Beatles.
Oh, so they haven't done it on the Pepper one or the Abbey Road one or anything. They didn't put the originals in.
No, just the new mixes. You want the original, you go back to the older CDs or even further back to the vinyl.
I guess the practical question is, you got the box set on your shelf and you can have the original right next to it, so it's actually not a problem in actual fact. But it'd be nice to have it in the box set
within the same set, right?
Yeah, and I guess there's occasionally people are going to buy a box set and they don't own the original one, so that's sort of, but No, look, I mean, if it was up to me, I would, which is not, I'd always I'd always put the original in as a disc, because at least it makes it sort of a historical thing there. It makes it, gives people a choice and stuff.
Hmm.
But really, the reality is people do have the choice. They do have CDs and vinyl. It's like they are still there. They just, instead of all being one box, they have to be next door to each other on a shelf, and two different things. But hey, well,
for people who want it to sound the way it sounded in the 60s, they should package these sets with one of these little crappy transistor radios that we used to listen to in the 60s and see how everyone likes that.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what Chris Thomas was saying.
In a way.
For recording their music, they were thinking about what would it sound like on the radio.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And Jeff Emerick was not in love with remixes either. So, Beatles fans all over the world have different opinions about this, and you won't be able to please everybody. So,
well, it's not pleasing. At the end of the day, I think that's, I think people have to not think about it being pleasing people. I think you're giving people choices, and like anybody, we're all entitled to have our choice. We all should be sort of adult enough, mature enough to say, hey, you're giving me choices, and guess what? I have my own choice, and I'm choosing this. It's not, it's not actually, which is fine, and that's what, that's all it is. It's not actually about pleasing or displeasing anybody. I mean, look, I realize people like talking about, did they like it? Do they listen to it? Is it good? Is it bad? They like to discuss, as any fan does. You like to just discuss what you hear. But at the end, the bottom line is that we're capable of enough of having different versions on a shelf, and the one we want to hear is the one we pull out and play it.
Right.
That's a perfect. Surely we're all mature enough to be able to do that without, it doesn't have to be a competitive thing. I mean, it's one thing of having a fun discussion about what they changed and how it sounds, all that sort of stuff. But I don't think it's really. It doesn't have to be the hard line of shouldn't happen, or these are terrible, or it's a bad idea. I mean, it doesn't. That takes it a bit too far, in my opinion, because there is literally no point to that. It's a pointless. It's a pointless thing. It was why go there?
So, Peter, well, all of us would probably be perfectly happy if you spent the rest of your life just doing Beatles stuff. Presumably, you have other projects, and what have you got in the works?
Well, we have always written, have scripts bubbling away. I mean, we have a couple of screenplays that we work on that not Beatles stuff. But but on the other hand, and I know, and sorry. And I don't know whether. I mean, the thing with Apple when you're working for them is they don't. There's no sort of 5-year plan. It's not like, now, Peter, we'd like you to do some more stuff, and next year this, and the year after we only do. I mean, there's none of those conversations. It's like you just get a phone call one day out of the blue, and can you do some and that? So I mean, I look. I at the moment we're working on well, I mean, I'm assuming some more separations will come down the line over the next months and years. For us to do. I mean, I'm assuming hopefully they'll use Mal to work their way through their entire catalog one way or the other. I mean, because as a fan, it would be cool. So I'm going to be involved in that way. And if they want me to do anything else, then they can certainly talk to me. And in the meantime, we're just working on scripts. I mean, we're taking, we've got no hurry. I mean, it takes a year or two to develop a script. We've got some ideas, but I don't think you're going to see me making a movie for the next year or so. Which is fine. Just fine. It's all good. I mean, because it's about time to have a little break, and just when it's not a break. You're actually just working up your ideas for whatever's next. But and it's maybe Apple will phone up and maybe they won't. It's just fine either way. It's been fun. I mean, the thing that I say about Apple, and I've said it to them too, is that I've done a lot of work with studios. You sort of work. You make films for a studio because you don't pay for it yourself; that somebody else pays for it, and so you're dealing with a corporation or a studio. And you get all the way through the process of developing, shooting of it, and release. And so you're just dealing with people who have, who come from a particular place, and most of the time, you deal with really nice people. I mean, Warner Brothers and Universal and whoever else we've been making films with. There's good people there, but at the end of the day, it's a corporation with shareholders, and there's just this feeling that there's a you've got a sort of a big entity out there, unknown. But I love working for Apple because they're tiny. They're really tiny. It is literally comes down to those four voices. Paul and Ringo, Olivia and Yoko. I mean, that's, you know, the bottom line. Jeff and Jonathan and the others do what they do and develop stuff. It comes down to those, you know, or I'm involved in stuff, and then those four. I mean, it's like it's you don't have the corporation, and I've said, I mean, I've just had so much fun working for them, because it's like you're working for a, you know, I mean, we've got a very small company here, about, you know, about the same size as Apple, about 12 or 15 people, employees. You know, I mean, it's all it is, and you know, and so it's just one small company in London and one small company in New Zealand, sort of working together on these things. It's just been an enjoyable. So I just really enjoy it from that point of view. Apart from, you know, put the whole Beatles thing to one side, which is obviously a whole different level of enjoyment. But you know, it's just fun to work with. It's a break from working for the big corporate studios and stuff. So I'm happy. Look, if they ever want me to do something, we've all. I mean, it's not just me. I mean, everyone, Claire and everyone, all the team have really enjoyed working with Apple. They're very helpful. They're very responsive. If we need anything, they do it immediately. They help us. They support us. Everything you'd want them to be. You know, if you're trying to get something made, and it's just an enjoyable experience. They're good people to work with, nice people, and it's fun to work with them. So I'm happy to keep on doing stuff whenever they want me to. But you know, sure.
Well, that's great. We're happy for you to keep doing it too.
I'm good. I just want to ask Allan the Mark Lewisham question. When's the second book coming out, Allan?
Should be out end of 24 or early 25.
Okay, good. So you've actually got you know, a definitive date, unlike Mark. You're going to know your flag in the sand. That's good. Great. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
This one will cover up to 1980. We will probably end it when he gets out of jail in Japan.
Right.
And it starts with Wings.
But if you wanted to end on a cliffhanger, you end it as he's being dragged into jail. people have to wait for the third book to find out what actually. But no, I understand. Yeah,
we consider that.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what it did for me. I mean, you know, is that I read the book, and it actually made me go back to the albums and hear some of those songs again, because the way that you described it and everything. I mean, some of them I probably hadn't actually listened to some of the songs for like 25, 30 years, you know, and you just think, oh, that is actually, I'm you know, need to tell the story behind it. And it certainly has given me a new appreciation of some songs, which I guess is a great thing that you've done. You know, you've actually it inspired me to reconnect with some of those songs, and I'm really, really pleased that it did. So thank you.
Thank you. That's what we were hoping readers would feel, that they would go back to the stuff and listen to things that they hadn't heard in a while, or that they hadn't heard at all even. So I'm really glad that you experienced it that way.
Well, that's good. That's good, and I'm glad that the book's there. And
for me,
I've got a few songs from 1973 to 1980 that I need to reconnect with, but I'll hold back till the second book comes out.
Okay.
You see, for me, I grew up in the 70s with Wings and McCartney first, because they were happening, they were current at the time. And then as I got older, I would go back and get, it was a lot of times, it was Christmas gifts. Christmas time, I'd get a bunch of Beatle records, and more times than not, they were not records I was familiar with. I still remember getting one Christmas morning, open this pile of records. I'm going, I'm seeing Magical Mystery Tour, and couldn't figure out what on earth it was. Who are these guys in the animal outfit? This is the Beatles? I didn't know this one. But for me, McCartney was the soundtrack to my youth, and Allan's book. Like, I mean, it's like being able to look behind the curtain at things that, you know, were part of my fabric growing up, and now I'm getting this peekaboo behind the scenes. So,
well, I mean, I just go. I sort of really connected with the Beatles. I mean, I must have heard them ever since, because I was born before Brian Epstein met them. You know. So I mean, so in theory, all the way from my growing up, I must have heard the Beatles. But but my parents didn't have any albums. So it was a Red and Blue albums that the first albums I ever bought in 1973 or 4. And so I was really, I spent the 70s discovering figuring it out, because there was no internet. There was no real, I didn't certainly have books or anything. It was like I couldn't, there's songs on here, right? and I was trying to figure out there's actually albums as well. These songs, there's a greater set, sort of these, a bunch of songs, and then I started to get snippets of songs that weren't on the Red and Blue album that I liked. There were things that I'd hear that weren't on it. I don't know, just some sort of a song would sort of whip through the radio. And I think, hang on, there's a Beatles song. That sounds good. And I actually had to work out for myself. I mean, obviously, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I had to work out for myself the whole idea of albums, singles, things, where they come from, and there's all this, and then obviously I started to buy the albums one at a time and discover. I mean, it was fun. It was actually you educated yourself about the entire career of the Beatles based on the Red and Blue being the introduction and the sort of appetite the appetite cleanser, whatever they call it. They from that point on, it was a process of learning yourself, discovering it yourself.
All right. Well, thank you once again, Peter, for your time. And you don't know how much it means to us.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I mean, it's fun. I only do it because it's fun to talk to you guys about this stuff. Believe me, if I'd figure out an excuse if somebody wanted to talk to me and I didn't want to do it, I'd wriggle my way out of it. But I'm very it's fun to talk to you guys. And
Okay, so that was another lovely visit with Peter Jackson. I hope we can do this every now and then. I don't know that we ever expected to. I don't know that we ever expected to do another, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you also to Claire Olson, who's you saw a square with her name on it during the broadcast. She works with Peter and helped arrange this, and got it together technically for us. And we should go around and do our contact information. Let's start with Darren.
All right. Look for me on Facebook. I have 2 Facebook pages. Send me a friend request at Darren Devivo, or click like on the other page, which is Darren Devivo, WFUV disc jockey and Beatles podcaster. I never remember the exact name. Say that every week, every show. So that's where you can find me on Facebook. That's pretty much the one place where I'm at social media wise. As for WFUV, I can tell you that WFUV's #1 song right now is Now and Then at the moment. And I think I mentioned this on the last show, that the Thursday, November 2nd, which was the day it was unveiled, Now and Then, WFUV played it every hour all day, and I wrapped that day up with the last 2 plays, and was happy to find that the next day I was playing it again. So if you want to listen to WFUV, we're in New York City, 90.7 FM on the dial, outside of the New York metropolitan area, or if you're in New York City and you're in a place where the radio reception is not great, listen on our website, WFUV.org, and we have an app, which I guess you could just simply find by going to an app store and getting it, downloading it, and it's an easy way to listen. I'm on the air Monday through Thursday nights, starting at 10 p.m. till 2 a.m., and Saturday afternoons from 1 to 4. So that's my deal.
Okay, Ken.
You can always reach me at my email address, which is everylittlething@att.net. Don't forget, I have another podcast show called Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast, which runs every other Monday night on YouTube as a live broadcast. And then after it gets recorded, it's there for forever on our YouTube channel. And that's with Kid O'Toole, Tom Lagnotti, and Joe Mayo. We just did a show on all this latest news about Now and Then. And so we're going to be doing a lot more about Now and Then and the Red and the Blue, and quite possibly something for the anniversary of the Ringo album, the 50th anniversary for that, on our next show.
Oh, thank you.
And there's also my own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, which is loaded with lots of interviews with various Beatle people. There's about 140 interviews on there, so please go to that, Ken Michaels Radio. And then there's my website, kenmichaelsradio.com. There's a page on there for my radio show, Every Little Thing, which lists all the radio stations that run it, about 50 radio stations, their broadcast times, and links to their website so you can stream the show. It's all running throughout the week on different radio stations. Again, that's at kenmichaelsradio.com. And one more thing, there's a Beatles trivia and games page where you can play along with Beatles trivia and all types of games that I have connected with Beatles songs and Beatles albums and Beatle history. There's 10 prizes of which to pick from. You get to pick one prize if you know the answer or answers for the trivia. And in addition to 2 books by Jude Sutherland Kessler on John Lennon. She's renowned as a Lennon expert and Beatle expert, and her big passion is doing John Lennon's entire story in 10 books. Well, 2 of her books are listed on my Beatles trivia and games page. And I will have a copy of Ken Womack's brand new book on Mal Evans, Living the Beatles Legend, to give away very soon. So look out for that at Ken Michaels Radio. And I believe that's just about everything.
Okay, so that leaves me. And it's pretty simple. You can find me on Facebook, either under Allan Kozinn or Allan Kozinn Remix. The McCartney Legacy has a Facebook page, and we're on Twitter. You can write to all of us here on the show at thingswesaidtodayradioshow@gmail.com, and follow us on Twitter at thingswesaidfab. So, again, a lot of fun. Always exciting to talk to our pal Peter.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, that's just saying that. Hearing you say that, our pal Peter, sounds good.
And the fact that he listened to our 400th episode, which is so flattering, you know.
Yeah. So, for Darren Devivo and Ken Michaels, I'm Allan Kozinn. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.